And welcome to the Chaska City Council meeting. We're at the Chaska Event Center again tonight for Monday, August 17, 2020. We'll call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Our flag standard isn't here, but our handy dandy Kevin was able to put a flag up for us, so appreciate that. It would be awkward not having a pledge of allegiance before our meeting, so made it much easier for us. So thank you. With that, Nate, will you call roll, please?
Hatfield.
Here.
Councilmember Hubbard.
Here.
Councilmember Wong.
Aye.
Councilmember Grau.
Aye.
Mayor Winchell.
Here. All right, moves us to item number 4, adopting the agenda. Are there corrections or additions to the agenda? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Wong,
Second.
second by Councilmember Hatfield to adopt the agenda. Discussion. None. Councilmember Grau.
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard.
Yes.
Councilmember Wong.
Aye.
Councilmember Hatfield.
Yes.
And Mayor Winchell. Passes 5-0. All right, moves us to visitor presentation. Is there anyone here that would like to speak at visitor presentation? Kevin, is there anybody on Zoom? All right, thank you. All right, being no one here, we will move on to item 6, approving previous meeting minutes. Again, if there are no corrections or additions, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Did you guys have them?
Is there a question?
Nothing.
Oh, I'd entertain a motion to approve previous meeting minutes.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Wong,
Second.
second by Councilmember Grau. Discussion. Hearing none. Councilmember Hubbard.
Yes.
Councilmember Wong.
Aye.
Councilmember Hatfield.
Yes.
Councilmember Grau.
Yes.
Shuttle, yes. Passes 5-0. Item number 7 is consent. Again, these are items that need approval, but not necessarily discussion, but anything can be pulled off at any time. With that, is there any discussion on any consent items? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Hubbard,
Second.
second by Councilmember Hatfield. Discussion. Hearing none. Councilmember Wong.
Aye.
Councilmember Hatfield.
Yes.
Councilmember Grau.
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard.
Yes.
Mayor Winchell, yes. Passes 5-0 on consent. Moves us to item number 8, action items. Adopt resolution 2020-67 and ordinance 979 approving preliminary plat and rezoning to Pioneer Vista.
Mayor and council member, this is an item that, if you remember, was in front of the council several weeks ago for concept plan approval. This is the land directly across the road from the Bella Vista neighborhood, just off of Pioneer Trail and just to the west, east of Clover Ridge Drive. It's a remnant piece of parcel that's actually been in existence since the beginning of the Clover Ridge neighborhood, which was back around 2001, 2002. The applicant is seeking approval of a 54-unit townhome development. It's about 17 acres in site. And this is coming from the Planning Commission as a recommendation of approval. I'll turn over to Liz to give the staff report.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, members of the council and Mr. Mayor. I'm going to share my screen here. Can everyone see that okay?
Yep.
Perfect. So like Matt mentioned, we have a preliminary plat and rezoning request in tonight for the Pioneer Vista project, which is being proposed by Lennar. So the site is highlighted here in orange on this aerial site exhibit. So the property is just south of Pioneer Trail. We have Clover Ridge Drive on its western edge. The Twin Cities and Western Railroad abuts the southern/eastern portion of the site. And then we have the Clover Ridge development just south of that as well.
So Liz, question,
Yeah.
as I look at that, I've never noticed this before, but is part of that site on the other side of Clover Ridge Drive?
Yes, so the property is made up of 2 parcels right now. And a majority of it has the ownership of the land just west of Clover Ridge Drive. So one of the things that they'll be doing with the preliminary plat is just platting off the area that they have for the project site. So the area to the west will be retained by the current property owner, Chaska Investment.
Also, the city council might remember that when Clover Ridge was platted, Clover Ridge Drive did not extend north of the railroad tracks. That Clover Ridge Drive extension came in about 2 or 3 years after the Clover Ridge neighborhood. And so that was actually one piece of land at one point. And then we built the road extension out to Pioneer Trail, which is kind of what bifurcated that parcel into 2.
Well, is that going to have to be, is there going to have to be a land swap at some point? Or what, isn't that going to make it kind of hard? Or wouldn't it be easier?
I think the question the mayor's asking is the triangle looks like it goes a little bit on the west side of Clover Ridge Drive. Is that just because the triangle's straight?
It's a bad drawing.
It's just a
Okay.
bad drawing, yes.
Okay,
Please excuse me not staying in the lines of the actual site, given my restriction on PowerPoint here. So that's my fault for not showing it.
'cause it didn't
as
make sense
accurate.
that part of it was on the other side. All right, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So just a little bit of a background for this site. So it was back in 2000 that the Clover Ridge neighborhood was basically planned and approved for some of its approvals. At that time, they did look at the potential in the area north of the railroad developing as well, and had some very conceptual exhibits and drawings put together that these areas would be, or this area in particular would be anticipated for multifamily housing. No formal approvals were done at that time, so that's why they came in at the very start of our planning process to develop this property. And that was back in May of this year. So they're in the second step of our planning process to come forward with the preliminary plat and rezoning. So specifically what they're requesting is a preliminary plat approval for the construction of a 54-unit townhome development. And this is the same as what was proposed during their concept plan as well. And then they're also requesting a rezoning request from the current zoning district that this parcel is in, which is rural, to a planned residential district, specifically PRD 76. So the existing conditions of the property itself, which is highlighted in red here, again, it's everything that's east of Clover Ridge Drive up to the extent of Pioneer Trail. This property is 17 acres in size, roughly. And then when you take out the existing wetland of 3.5 acres, you get about 13 acres of developable acreage just to the north of that. It was back in 2017 that they also did some preliminary work, such as a tree survey and a wetland delineation. So with the tree survey that they did, a lot of the trees that were surveyed were very small in caliber and size, so nothing very significant out there that we would call out as significant trees to really try to preserve. So most of them, which is kind of on the north side, are mainly those small cedar trees, about 1 to 2 inch in caliber size. And then the other piece to note is there is an existing curb cut on the east side of Clover Ridge Drive, which was for anticipation for this property to develop. And this is located about 400 feet south of the Pioneer Trail intersection. So they will be utilizing this existing curb cut as the entrance into their development. And then we've got the site plan for the overall development here. So again, they're proposing 54 units total, which is made up of 11 different buildings on the site. So 3 of them will be situated on the north side of this proposed road, and then 8 of them will be proposed on the south side. So each of these buildings will either be 4 units or 6 units in size to be a total of 54 units. And they are planning these to be owner occupied. So as you'll see on the preliminary plat, these are all separate lots to be privately owned by each homeowner. One big change from the concept plan. In the concept plan, they did propose a private street, and that was mainly due to kind of the site constraints of the site. With a private street, you can go lower in width, so that's what they explored in the initial start of this project. But they couldn't afford the option to do private utilities under the private road. So in this preliminary submittal, they have switched to a public street with public utilities so that the city would be the prime owner of both the road and the utilities underneath it. And then this public street basically ends in a cul-de-sac at the southeasterly portion of the site. They are proposing ponding on the south side, which again is gaining maintenance access from the end of this cul-de-sac. And in addition to that, there will be an amenity area on the southeasterly portion as well. So what they're proposing in the amenity area right now is they'll have an area for grilling, some benches and picnic tables there. They're also proposing a fire pit with some seating around that, and then some open play field area, and then a trail which would ultimately connect into more of a passive trail around the pond. We've also included a couple section drawings for the site. Wanted to give people an understanding of kind of the relationship between a couple pieces relative to the site itself. So the first section drawing on top here is basically taking a section cut from Pioneer Trail through the first 3 unit buildings and then through kind of the center of, or just a portion of those 3 buildings. So wanted to show the relationship in height difference between Pioneer Trail over here on the left-hand side to the units themselves. So the street at Pioneer Trail does sit a little bit above the site itself. I think it was approximated at about 8 feet above the lowest floor, or I'm sorry, the first floor elevation. And then they'll be doing some additional screening in between the buildings and Pioneer Trail itself to help with that buffer between the units and the heavily used roadway there. And then the second section drawing they're providing is basically a cut between the railroad tracks, the amenity area, and then up to the point of the nearest building to the south there. And wanted to show again that relationship status and separation between both the buildings, the amenity area, and the railroad. So as you can see, the railroad does sit lower than the amenity area or the site itself. And I believe they've approximated at about 10 feet lower than kind of the average elevation of the amenity area. And again, there will be an existing tree line, which is basically encompassed by the right-of-way of the Twin Cities and Western Railroad. Plus, they will be planting additional trees outside of that and next to the units themselves to help with kind of that buffer between those uses. I've also wanted to show the tree preservation survey that they're proposing. So basically what's highlighted in red are all of the trees that will have to be removed as a part of this proposal. And again, the majority of these trees on the north side are those 1 to 2 inch caliber cedars here. So there's nothing of significance, so to speak, that's being removed. And then as you can see, as you get to the edge of the site, they are proposing to keep the tree line or the trees outside of the right of way of the Twin Cities and Western Railroad intact. There will be a couple other trees that will have to be removed with the incorporation of the stormwater pond, however. And then layered on top of that, we have the landscape plan here. So they will be incorporating a healthy amount of trees, both the deciduous and coniferous trees, into the overall development. The comments that were brought up in the concept plan were more so around the focal areas of what abuts Pioneer Trail on the north side here. So they will be incorporating both deciduous and coniferous plantings to kind of fill in those areas. And then another focal area was kind of what abuts the Twin Cities and Western Railway. So they will also be incorporating additional deciduous trees into kind of that existing tree line. And then they'll have a staggered layer of coniferous trees on the south side of that southerly most building unit to both buffer from the railway as well as the amenity area. And then they're also incorporating more trees kind of around the more passive areas around the perimeter of the wetland edge to really enhance kind of the vegetative edge that you see there. I've incorporated a couple of photos, but included the full drawing sets into your packet for what they're proposing for the buildings, but wanted to show kind of more the realistic view of the buildings that they are proposing out here. So you'll see both the front and the back sides proposed in these images. So again, they're proposing 54 units. In terms of an estimated value of these, they will start at a price point of $310,000 to $320,000 in value. They will be owner occupied. The units will range from anywhere from 1,700 to 1,800 square feet in size. They will all incorporate 3 bedrooms per unit and then have the option for 2 to 3 bathrooms per dwelling unit. And all of them will have a 2-car garage, as you can see in that above image. And they will be doing a level of articulation with both some stone veneer on the front, as well as different applications of siding on the front side. So they'll have shake siding and then a variation of lap siding with 2 different colors that will essentially wrap around the building. So one of the comments we brought up during concept was making sure that they were providing 360-degree articulation through the backside of these buildings, since they will be visible on the backside. And typically what we like to see is band boards, color variation, gables with articulation, etc. So what they're proposing is a band board basically dissecting the first and second levels here and then doing a color change in between. All of the units will have their own deck systems as well, and then they will have those articulated gables on the back side as well. So those will have the shake style that you see in the front kind of come through in the back there. So in conclusion, they have addressed most of the comments that were brought up during the concept plan, or I should say all of them. And so we are asking you to make a motion to adopt resolution number 2020-67, which is approving the preliminary plat for Pioneer Vista. And then based on the conditions that are listed within that resolution. And then you'll also be making a second motion tonight to adopt ordinance number 979, which would be approving the rezoning from the rural classification and then rezone to the planned residential district number 76. I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, the applicant is also in attendance tonight to help answer questions.
Questions?
I just had one. Liz, can you back up to kind of where you're talking about the cars and trees and in relation to sight lines and so I noticed that, you know, Pioneer Trail is elevation is higher, obviously, than the houses. My question really kind of relates to Isabella Parkway and some of the units. If you forward to where to the neighborhood plan, kind of where Isabella Parkway comes out, you know, and would the car headlights shine, you know, on the second floor of those units that are going to be directly across, or is that far enough away? I know in 25 years, it probably won't matter when the trees fill in, but in the immediate future, is that going to be a problem?
That's a good question. And I think it might be better answered by Josh Metzer with Lennar, if that's something that they've looked at and have confirmed that it's going to be an issue or it's not going to be an issue.
All right, any other questions for Liz before we bring Josh up?
I think this probably falls under Liz. So now that it's going to be a city street, that I assume that means that city plows are plowing that snow. Is the thought being the end of the cul-de-sac and kind of that green space would be where you'd pile the snow or you haul the snow out of there? Any
Yeah,
thought?
I think what has been highlighted so far is that the end of the cul-de-sac is going to be where a majority of the snow is going to go. Plus they have areas, open areas on this side as well to get more snow storage over.
Okay. Yeah, the only comment I make is just with the wetland there. Anything that ends up in that snow is going to end up in that wetland when it melts. So it's just that, you know, salt, oil, liquid, all of that. So that wetland might take a little bit of more of your typical abuse. Because if you put it at the end of that cul-de-sac, which is a natural spot to pile the snow, my assumption based on kind of the topography land is all that water is going to run into that wetland. So just a comment about that, but there's not much to do with that. I guess the other question that concerns me, and I think this is probably still Liz's question, and it is actually, you pointed out the road across. Has it been explored to have an access from Pioneer Trail? I'm not good with distance and scale, but it looks like a long stretch into a cul-de-sac. And I know we do that quite often. We have long cul-de-sacs, but it may make, like I said, I was just curious if it ever made sense to like the road right across. I think you said it was Isabel, if you would ever align those two, or if Pioneer doesn't allow that.
I think it was explored very briefly by the applicant to incorporate an access onto Pioneer Trail. And I see that Angie from Carver County, I think, is in attendance. I'm not sure if they ever had comments on that before it came through our process, but there would be a lot of improvements that would have to occur to Pioneer Trail in order to incorporate an additional access onto there. So I don't know if the benefit versus the cost ever made sense in that route.
Okay.
Would be rather challenging with Pioneer higher and trying to get onto the highway, especially in the winter time. So I think that the grade separations might have answered that question.
Right.
That's what I had.
Anyone else?
Save my question till later.
I just have a couple questions, Liz. So last time when we had the concept plan, I thought there was a couple places for parking, and I raised a concern about not having any parking there. And the answer was that they have driveways that you can park in. But if you have more than two people over, they're parking on the street. And now that street becomes narrow. Now, I know you went to a city street, but it's still a pretty narrow area there to get in and out of there. Now, I see no parking spots now at all for excess parking. That is a concern to me, especially on these long cul-de-sacs and things like that, that if somebody has a housewarming party or anything, family over, they're going to be all parked. And I assume you can only park on the one side because the other one would be blocking driveways.
Right. They did show some visitor parking spaces on one side of the street on the north side to accommodate up to 27 parking stalls, which would meet our visitor parking requirement. So they would be signing kind of a portion of one side of the street for those visitor parking spaces, which has also been reviewed by Public Works as well, that it wouldn't be an issue to incorporate those.
Okay, if they're happy. It just seems like not enough space, but.
And since you brought it up, one of the things I was concerned about was also like access for fire. So like if there was like, let's say someone's having a party, has a number of visitors over, the spaces are consumed, and having a fire truck stop there, like having to park, and then someone else who's further down the cul-de-sac wants to get out, is there enough room to get out the other direction? Right, that's the question. Now they're basically blocked in.
So the parking would only go up to a certain extent. I don't think they didn't show it up to the bulb of the cul-de-sac. So the cul-de-sac would essentially be that turnaround.
Well, I guess what I'm asking is that
He's saying is a fire truck stopped in front of a house, would they be able to get by the fire truck?
so let's say that there's people parking on the street taking those spaces, let's say in that middle of that area, and then in that same area, a fire truck has to stop because that's where they're needed. But somebody who's on the east side of the fire truck and the parking wants to get out or needs to get out for something, then are they blocked in by the fire truck and people parking there?
The answer would be yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just like any other street or any other dead end, when the fire truck pulls up and if they're in the street's going to be closed until the fire truck finishes its emergency operations.
Right, and I would say too that our residential street section does accommodate parking both sides and still allows for a fire truck access to be able to navigate through the streets. So hopefully that helps.
So that means that in theory it's too wide plus a fire truck. So it's in theory, if the fire truck was over enough, that someone could sneak out.
Correct.
Okay, but it would just be it'd be like a one at a time, because it wouldn't be a 2-lane, it'd be a single lane.
Yes.
It'd be tight.
When a fire truck's fully deployed, it's 22 feet, right?
Yep. So they could very well be blocked depending upon if it's deployed, or if they're there for like a medical.
Yep.
Yep.
Just like almost any other street, where you have a dead end. If they're in the wrong spot, yeah, you're going to be inconvenienced, but it's an emergency situation, and it's not long-standing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I echo the mayor's comments. I just think about the annoyance of backing onto your driveway when there's a car right behind you. Which is the case in this situation. If you're parking on the other side and you're backing out, then your neighbor has 5 people over and they're behind you. It is what it is. I don't think there's not much of a good solution of where to fit some extra parking that's not on the street, but I would echo the concern of the mayor, just on, visitors, and you get 3-4 cars there, you're going to have a kind of a busy area, but
it doesn't seem that different than any other street where you had people parked behind you. I mean,
it's pretty fair.
it seems like the street in front of my house. People on the other side are going to back out and there's going to be cars there. So
What is the width of this street now? With this as a city street?
32 feet.
Yeah,
32?
Yep.
That's the standard street, like where we got everywhere, right?
Yep.
yes.
Okay. All right.
Now that I've nitpicked it a little bit, I will commend that it's a unique, and I like the project in a unique piece of land. there's not probably much more that you could do in this land with the big wetland and kind of the space of it. So as much as I'm nitpicking critical things about like parking and water melt into I will say that it is a good use of that space because it's kind of a unique shape and then has a big wetland in there.
The other question I have, Liz, who does that trail belong to? Is that a private trail? Being it's not connected?
This one?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a private trail, so it would be maintained by the HOA.
Okay.
It will also operate as a maintenance access to the pond if we need it.
All right. Anyone else questions for Liz? All right, I have a couple questions for the owners. Is Josh here?
Yep, he is.
Good evening.
Oh, okay, so he's not here. He's all right, got it. A couple quick questions. I thought generally when I see a project like this, these are rental units, but these are owner occupied. Is that the way they're doing that now?
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and members of council. Yes, these will be owner occupied. Every townhome development that we've built up to date is sold as owner occupied.
And that's what they're doing. I was thinking that they'd be rental, but that's what the market is now. People are buying that.
Yeah, they're buying townhomes from us now, and they have for many years.
Okay.
They're actually, our townhome communities are probably our most competitive communities that we currently have in development right now.
Okay. The other thing that just kind of jumped out at me, do you put any deck separations from deck to deck? That there's some sort of a privacy. It doesn't have to be a 10-foot, but at least that if you sit down, you're kind of not having your neighbors watch.
Yeah, thank you, Liz. As you can see from this picture here, I would estimate that's probably at least 10 feet in between decks on the rear of the homes.
You don't do anything? I missed that.
Yeah, Liz is showing here this picture. You can see the distance here between decks.
I think he's questioning if you put up any type of screen walls.
You put up any privacy wall between them?
Yeah.
No, I don't think we do up at that second level. I'm not sure if it's a structural issue. There's also an issue with the alignment of windows because we don't have windows stacked perfectly in line. You can see they're kind of staggered off. So you'd end up with a sound wall basically blocking light from multiple windows on either unit.
Okay. It's weird. All right, anyone else for the applicant?
I do have a question for the applicant. Okay. So going back to the concept plan, one of the things that was that I thought was like well thought through with the concept plan was that there is a gap between units 26 and 27, and that gap was originally for access to some green space area. But with the realignment of the green space and that the open space to the east of the property, those units kind of got pushed together. And what's interesting is to Councilmember Hubbard's comment about the headlights, that opening between units 26 and 27 would have been where the dwell space would have been. So if someone was coming down from the other street, from Isabella, that they would have been basically pointed at an open space rather than pointed at someone's house. So then if they made a left or right turn, they'd still make a left or right turn. But at least if they were waited at the light or waited for traffic to move, they were just pointed at open space so it wouldn't impact anyone. Is it possible to kind of create that open space again? Or, because I still think that's kind of a little bit problematic. I mean, for residents who are like facing the end of that street, basically.
Sure, and I apologize. I'm not sure, council member, what your last name is because I can't tell here on the Zoom call. But so I'm taking a look here at the old concept plan.
Yep.
And right. And so what we preferred to do here was by pushing the buildings together, we were able to shorten the cul-de-sac, which opened up a much larger community area and open space area on the east end. And we thought would make better sense over there, so that we could kind of separate any, gathering activity from being directly behind some of these units for privacy issues. And also by having a shorter cul-de-sac, you have, the city has a shorter distance of road and utilities to maintain in the long run as well. As far as headlights into the, some of these units, the main level on these units is mostly garage space and maybe a foyer area. The upper level is a bedroom. And I guess it's really, I wouldn't see this as any different than, a home at the end of a T intersection. I mean, if you look up at Isabella a little further there, that first T intersection in Isabella there, you've got a single family home straight away from that cross street there coming in. So I don't know that it'd be that big of an issue. I believe we may add some disclaimer language in the contracts for these particular units, maybe stating that, you're directly across from Isabella. But again, really not that much different than any other home that's at the, opposite side of a T intersection.
Yeah, I mean, I understand, but it's just saying now is an easy time to, I mean, it's not saying that you should shift around like the whole development, but just change the number of units stacked on which building to make sure to ensure the openings in that space instead of we're having basically have the middle of the building in that spot. So it's, just kind of speculating that now, this would be easier time just to change just the number of units in the building. So maybe the two buildings next to it had more units or something like that, just to, to effectively create that spot in that location.
Right. I'd like to echo those comments. In looking at that illustration that Ms. Hansen had pointed out, that the road is higher, that means that the cars coming down Isabella will be higher. And my concern is in that second floor bedroom, just looking at the illustrations of the homes that would be built there. Kind of piggybacking off of Councilmember Wong's comments, maybe the trees that are kind of around that area could be maybe faster growing as well, to kind of help fill that in a little faster over time.
And what we could maybe do is, rather than, I think currently we're showing a plan to plant deciduous trees there, we could possibly put a, small row of conifers that'll be fuller and will probably come to higher growth sooner than a deciduous would. So we could probably accommodate that in the landscape plan.
Yes.
Is this the same amount of units as the preliminary?
It is, yes.
Okay.
Or as the concept, yes.
The concept, sorry. Right, any other questions?
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I could possibly address some of the comments that were made prior by council members. Some of the, I believe it's Councilmember Grau's concerns about snow and salt melt making its way to the wetland. Any snow left here at the end of the cul-de-sac, anything that would melt to make its way to the storm system would be brought down to this storm pond, which is obviously meant to treat that storm water before its outlet into the wetland. And also, if there's anything that were to melt and make its way, traverse across land here, you do have grass, and also we will be maintaining at least, I believe it's a 20-foot wetland buffer, vegetative buffer around the wetland, which, the purpose of that is to filter out any, sediment or any harmful things that may make its way into the wetland. So maybe it's, possible some could get there, but we believe we're going to be treating most of it to filter out before it makes its way. And Liz was correct. We had previously explored access onto Pioneer Trail from directly across from Isabella, but we felt in speaking with staff that the cul-de-sac of this length would be permissible. We thought it would be a better idea to limit another access point down to Pioneer Trail just for traffic and safety purposes as well. And yeah, parking, I think parking was a bigger issue prior when we had a private street, which was a narrow street by quite a few feet. And, you know, with our driveways, our garages, our 2-stall garages, our driveways can hold 2 cars as well. So that's 4 cars you can hold per unit off of the street. And then parking on the street, again, I think like it was pointed out earlier, it's because it's a public street, this won't really be any different than any other street. So that's what we're looking at. One condition, if I could, that Planning Commission had added to the conditions of approval was a requirement for a tot lot. And as discussed before, we would prefer that requirement or that condition be removed. Not that we're generally opposed to tot lots. We certainly install tot lots in other communities, but with this community, we were looking at this being more of a kind of a natural open space kind of environment. And obviously a tot lot would not be necessarily a bad thing, but would kind of change that the style of that community area over there on the east end. And, you know, as explained at Planning Commission, tot lots are definitely probably the main amenity of ours that we provide that is the most underutilized. Now, maybe over the first few years of this community's development, it would be used by, you know, some kids that are in the community. But over time, as those kids grow, it's a amenity, like I said, that becomes less and less used and really doesn't benefit the majority of members in the community. And speaking of our townhome communities, certainly we do have children that, families with children that move into our townhomes, but the percentage is certainly far lower in our townhome communities versus our single family communities. Most of our townhome clients are single adults, retirees, empty nesters, or you know, divorcees. So if possible, you know, based off of, you know, the time that we would put a tot lot in would be well after we've got many of these buildings started, because we don't want to have children having traffic at a tot lot while we still have construction traffic on site. So the installation of a tot lot probably wouldn't take place until we've already sold, hopefully, if sales go well, up to 50% of the units in the community. And if it looks like majority of these homes are being sold to families with children, it's likely, you know, on our own volition, we would install a tot lot, but we, you know, based off market conditions, but we would prefer that decision for a tot lot be left to Lennar based on, you know, the market that we're selling to in this community as we get this thing going, rather than it being a mandate from the city. So just wanted to put that request out there.
I personally really liked seeing the open field. I liked the concept there at the end. I thought that I don't have kids, so I think that's really versatile for anybody that would want to use it, whether it's teenagers that wanted to put up a volleyball thing and have a day, or adults or kids. So I personally really liked the idea of a open area there at the end. It's more versatile. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. Oh, well, I'm not opposed to the waiting portion. I live in a townhome with a 5-year-old, and I know that with the lack of yard, though, that's a very desired amenity as a you know, an owner of a townhome, that you don't have the space to put a playground in your backyard. You don't own it. So to have something there accessible when you have small children is really desired. But at the same time, I can understand if your homeowners aren't people with small children, then, you know, I get the space part of it. So I'm not opposed to waiting, but I think that you do have to consider that these people most likely aren't going to have large yards, that would be a very desired amenity.
And I'll pose this to Liz or Kevin, is a tot lot required? Is that part of our, requirement in something like this?
It's not expressly called out as a requirement. We require that for multifamily developments that they provide a certain amount of usable open space. And then the programming of that usable open space, we always kind of look to the developer on what they think will be most successful there based on the demographic that they're catering to.
I mean, I see both sides of this, but if we leave it to Lennar, it'll never get built. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't mean that to be whatever, but I don't ever see it being built. But we look at it, can we do something and look at it after the 50% and make that decision? Because I don't know now. Josh is right. This could be all, empty nesters or something like that, and then, but in the same sense, I'm an empty nester, but I have grandkids over all the time, and they're constantly going to the park. So what concerns me here is if there's no park there, they'll find a park, and then that means crossing the railroad tracks or crossing Pioneer to go into Isabella. And that's that's where I have my angst a little bit about this, is doing that. And then the tot lots to the south, a good share of those are association owned. And then we'll hear from the association that, other people are coming in to use that. So I get it both ways, but I'd like to revisit it, that we have some input and not just say, leave it up to Lennar. That's just my opinion.
Could we make it a condition? So that's so once at 50%, that if there's a certain number of, some threshold percentage of purchasers have, children under a certain age or expecting children, then, effectively the criteria that would be used to determine that, right?
I mean, Kevin, Liz, Matt, is this being too complicated? I don't know. I don't want to make this complicated, but I would, if the planning commission felt enough that they asked for it, there's something there. So I just don't want to poo-poo it without really, I guess I wasn't expecting that, because the way I read the report was that was the idea, and that they were going to do it maybe a little bit further past. But the condition that Josh is asking for is to get rid of it and leave it up to Lennar, and I just struggling with that. So
I also look at it like homeownership transition and changes over the years, right? That the original homeowners in this neighborhood are not going to be the same homeowners possibly in 20 years. And as the market or economics change in our community, you might find that a lot of families with small children might have to move in, or vice versa. So, it would be difficult to hinge one thing on the other, because we don't know what the future is going to hold in this particular neighborhood as far as demographics.
The other piece of it is kind of interesting, is it becomes also an amenity that may attract people to say, hey, if there's kids amenities there, it's oh, this is a family friendly community. It may attract more people to purchase there too. So
but
that's a whole other
their
piece of it.
Marketing that
Right.
We really don't get into. I'm just following what the planning brought it up. So I don't know, Liz, Kevin, or Matt, if someone can.
From my perspective, I mean, obviously there's two sides to this, and both are very logical. To me, the ownership of these are going to change over the years, no doubt. To me, it's maybe more useful, and I'm not sure if this is the way the Planning Commission looked at it or not. To me, it's more useful to look at the actual location of the site and the fact that it's pretty physically separated from any of the other playground amenities around, where if you get in south of the railroad tracks, there's quite a few accessible amenities. Don't really require you to to cross major roads or across the railroad tracks. To me, this is an isolated enough site that it's not illogical to have a playground just so you don't have to have kids crossing Pioneer Trail, because the next closest park, which is a city park, is up in
Concourse Heights.
Concourse Heights, which is at the intersection of Clover Ridge and Pioneer Trail, and maybe about a block and a half to 2 blocks to the northwest of there. And there's a Jonathan tot lots. They're probably about 5 blocks to the south of here, and about 6 blocks to the south is the Clover or the community park playgrounds. So this is to me, if you're going to make the decision, to me, it should be based more on the site and maybe some of the limitations of the site, because to make it based on what their sales are at 50%, it's pretty cumbersome. And at the same time, I'm not sure it means much, because that's going to change over time. And to me, it's what decision is being made for the long-term interest of this site.
So we look at, so were the 2 nearest playgrounds then were, which ones again? Okay, so that one over there.
And they like the community park.
And then down at Mark Twain and Hunter Mark.
Okay.
Mhm. Yep, right there.
No, down farther, even farther. Right
Right
there,
here.
Okay.
right there, and then over at the school.
So basically the one to the south is more, it's closer. I mean, it's not something you'd like, it seems like it's a little further than you'd walk a toddler or a tyke to. And the one to the north, you'd have to walk across Pioneer Trail, right?
Yes.
Kelzer Park is to the north, and Pioneer Trail is kind of difficult because of the high-speed nature of that roadway.
Yeah.
So it seems like, logically speaking, you probably wouldn't want to like walking your kids across. So it basically become driving your kids to some sort of playground, basically.
That would be a natural boundary if we were looking at this from a city park development perspective. Pioneer Trail is a boundary that we wouldn't cross.
Yep. So in that case, it seems like it would make sense to have something there that's some sort of a playground.
Yeah, I mean, certainly it meets our definition of being within a quarter mile of a neighborhood park. But, the neighborhood parks tend to be that age range of kids that are just a little older, walking a toddler to, a park 6 blocks away, they're going to be tired before they even get there.
Yeah.
We can,
Also, later on, it's probably easier to add the fire ring and stuff than it is to add a tot lot from an association perspective.
I was just going to say, this is Josh with Lennar. After hearing the discussion, we can go ahead and include a form of tot lot. I know previously Liz had pointed out there's a space on the north side next to the 3 buildings on the north side. We would actually probably prefer it be located off the end of the cul-de-sac by the other amenities, just because that's the area of activity. That's where you're going to have the most adult supervision and the most traffic. So it'd be preferred to have the tot lot over there where there's supervision and further away from passing vehicles. So yeah, we can include a tot lot, but we would prefer it be located there somewhere in the playfield area, probably.
Well, I'm glad you did. I wasn't seeing the council remove that condition anyway, so thank you for making that staying in as a condition. So, all right, any other questions for Josh, Liz, anybody? If not, I'd entertain a motion. Let's start with we have to do the variance or the rezoning first, or doesn't it really matter?
Actually, I had one quick question, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor. Liz, do we need to make a point to change the language that the trail on the trail material?
Yeah, we should probably put it on record. There's a condition to add a mulch trail around the stormwater pond. But the preference would be, and this is coming from our Public Works Department, that it be a mowed trail as opposed to a mulch trail. So still providing access for people around this stormwater pond, but having it only be mowed.
What does public work want? I'm sorry, I couldn't catch that.
They want mold instead of mulch.
Yeah, sorry. We have a condition in our resolution right now that requires a mulch trail around the stormwater pond, but our Public Works Department would prefer that it be mowed instead of mulch.
That'd be what? I'm still.
Mowed.
Mowed.
With a lawnmower.
Got it. That wasn't making sense to me, but no. Okay. Well, we'll leave that up to whatever was in theirs. And you'll work that out, Liz?
Yeah, we can just do that administratively. Just switch it over.
All right, I'm going to go back to my original question. Does it matter if we do the rezoning first or resolution 2020-67? Make a difference? Anybody?
I will make a motion to adopt resolution 2020-67.
Okay, so I have a motion by Councilmember Hubbard. Second by Councilmember Wong to adopt 2020-67, which is a preliminary plot for Pioneer Vista. Discussion. Hearing none. Councilmember Hatfield.
Yes.
Councilmember Grah.
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard.
Yes.
Councilmember Wong.
Aye.
Mayor Winchell, yes. Passes 5-0. With that, then I'd be looking at a motion and a second for ordinance 979, which is the rezoning from, I believe, R to PRD, forgot the number.
76.
Oh, PRD 76.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Wong,
Second.
second by Councilmember Grah to, again, ordinance 979, which is rezoning from rural to PRD 76. Discussion. Hearing none. Councilmember Grah.
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard.
Yes.
Councilmember Wong.
Aye.
Councilmember Hatfield.
Yes.
Mayor Winchell, yes. Passes 5-0. Okay, thanks, Josh.
Thank you very much.
All right, moves us on to 8B, adopt resolution 2020-68, approving a variance to encroach into the wooded steep slope and setbacks for track B of RLS N 117.
Mayor and Councilmember, this is another item coming from the Planning Commission. This is applicant, say their name wrong, that Acevedo residents. They are looking for a variance to be able to build a living unit. They have some pretty significant restrictions on their lot that are difficult to work with. Staff has done an analysis on hardship, which there's pretty defined process through state statute for us to look at hardship and what really defines that and coming to recommendations. So this is coming out of the Planning Commission with a recommendation that variance be granted. And Liz is here to present the findings of that variance study.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, members of the council. Mr. Mayor, I'm going to do another share of my screen. Can we all see that? I'm assuming so.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Great, thank you. So like Matt mentioned, we have a variance request in tonight for to encroach into wooded steep slopes and their setbacks per ordinance. And this is specifically on the registered land survey number 117 for tract B, which is its legal description. And it's being proposed by Karen and Nick Acevedo. So to give you an idea where the site is located, it is quite hidden from the naked eye, but I've highlighted it here within the orange boundaries. So it's basically right next to the Hammers property, which is just to the west of this site. Currently, you gain access off of Cardinal Street. There is a shared driveway that provides access to the existing Tract A lot, which also has a cross-access easement over it to gain access to the Tract B lot. So again, this site is kind of nestled into that wooded area just south of Cardinal Street. Then you have Highway 41 just on the east side, and additional residential on the south and north areas. And this is a more zoomed in perspective of the lot that we're looking at. Just to point out that it is composed of two separate parcel ID numbers or two separate parcels, but it is one contiguous parcel as we look at it. And then the topography contours are also overlaid onto this aerial exhibit just to give you an understanding of some of the steepness that is occurring in and around the overall area. So just a bit of a background on this property in particular. The registered land survey number 117 was approved back in May of 1998. So at that time it was platted. Tract A, which is the lot just to the east of Tract B, consisted of the existing home at the time of the person who was proposing this plat. And then Tract B was basically platted for the anticipation of a future residence. So Tract B was platted to be able to have an additional residence on it. And at the time of those approvals, there were a couple easements that were also put in place over this property and over both Tract A and B. So one of them is a scenic easement on the north side of this tract to basically encompass the ravine and kind of steep wooded area around it. So basically that's kind of a preserved area to be maintained in perpetuity. And then the cross-access easement basically allows both Tract A and B to gain access off of the shared driveway off of Cardinal Street. So a couple things about this lot in particular. So it is currently already zoned medium density residential R2. So it is zoned appropriately to be able to have a residence on it. The area that we're looking at, or the parcel that we're looking at, is composed of 1 acre of size. Again, it's two separate parcels, but altogether it does equal 1 acre. City sewer and water are in proximity, so they will be required to connect into the city utilities as they build on this lot. As I mentioned before, the scenic easement is on the north side. I'll show an exhibit where that is in just a second here. And as you could see in the aerial exhibit, the entire property is encumbered by woods. So the applicant has taken the liberty to do a tree survey on the property to give us a better understanding of kind of the trees that they're dealing with. So 89 trees were surveyed. So these are trees that are anywhere from 6 inches in caliber or more. And of the trees that were surveyed, 6 of them were classified as good condition, and then 4 were classified as great condition by an arborist. So these 10 trees that were in those good and great classifications are proposed to be preserved, and something that the applicant looked at as an intention of their site plan. Wooded steep slopes are present on kind of the central portion of the site. And so when we say wooded steep slopes, it's basically any area that's 18% in slope or greater and has woods on it. So that does basically dissect the middle of this property, and I'll show where that is in the next slide. And then lastly, another piece to keep in mind is there is a water main line that dissects the property on more so the southern portion of the site too. So just another added challenge to the site itself. So what they're asking for tonight is the variance from section 9.9.3 of the zoning ordinance, which is titled as setback from steep slopes. It's basically an ordinance that protects wooded steep slopes 18% or more, and then establishes setbacks on top of that to further preserve these areas. So the reason they're requesting this variance is to be able to build a residence on the property. And then from a high level perspective, the hardship that they're proposing that they're faced with is basically the presence of wooded steep slopes, the setbacks that are applied to those, and then also the water main line that exists on the south side. So we put together a little graphic exhibit here just to show you kind of all these pieces that come into play that are happening on the parcel itself. So the parcel is everything that's outlined here in purple. We have the scenic and drainage easement that was established back in 1998 on the north side of the property here. So again, this is basically an area that has to remain as is. And then we also have highlighted where the wooded steep slope is. So basically everything in orange is where wooded steep slope was delineated on the site. And then when you apply the associated setbacks with that, it gives you less and less buildable area to build on for this site. So the setbacks are a 50-foot building setback from the edge of these wooded steep slopes. And then within that, there's a 30-foot no grade, no mow setback as well. And then on the south side here in blue is the water main line that currently dissects the property. So when you kind of add all those pieces together, overlaid with the setbacks that apply to this lot for the R2 zoning district, you get this small sliver of land kind of at the southwestern portion of the property that would be essentially buildable by meeting all of the setbacks and ordinances that apply. So this is their site plan. And again, we've had it overlaid on kind of the conditions of the property as well, just to give you an idea of kind of what they're proposing. So you can see the shared driveway that provides access into the site. They would be proposing a driveway extension off of that access easement that they have. And then basically providing access up to the single family home on kind of the westerly central portion of the site. And again, the basis of kind of where they're locating this driveway and the residence itself is to maintain a good enough separation between the water main line that dissects this property. They've also noted that this is the flattest area of the lot. So basically everything kind of in this corner area kind of starts to level off. So it does become more of the desirable area to build due to its flat character there. The driveway was designed so that it could follow the contours of the property itself so that the slope that they propose doesn't exceed what the city limitations are. And it also kind of weaves through some of the wooded character there as well. In addition, so this is the tree survey overlaid onto the property. So the location of the home and the driveway were meant to basically save kind of what the good and great condition trees were. And I'll actually go to this really quickly. So they did highlight kind of where those great trees are, which are basically kind of within the wooded steep slope area and then on some of the outskirts within the setbacks. So they wanted to be mindful of those great trees to basically avoid those with the placement of the home. And they also want to make sure that they can try to save as many trees as they can on site based on what they're proposing. So they are taking down, I believe, 18 trees total of the 89 that were surveyed. And that's due to the placement of the home and where the driveway is that couldn't avoid those 18 trees. But the remainder that were surveyed will be intact with this proposal. And then they've also included a drawing of kind of the proposed home. So again, their intention was to try to build up versus out, so they avoided doing a Rambler style home so that it wouldn't have more of an expanse in terms of its building footprint. So they're essentially proposing kind of a 2-level above grade type home with a tuck under garage for the basement area. So again, the design was intentional to try to provide the least invasive building footprint to the property itself. So there's usually one thing that has to be apparent for a variance application or a variance request to come in, and that is the undue hardship on the property. So when we say undue hardship, I'm just going to read this definition here because it's the best way to describe it. It means that the property in question cannot be put to a reasonable use if used under conditions allowed by the official controls. The plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property, not created by the landowner, and the variance, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the locality. So basically, the property has to have some unique physical characteristics to it that would prohibit it from being able to meet all of the ordinances or regulations that would apply to that lot. So just one thing to kind of keep in mind as we're kind of going through this evaluation here. So when we review a variance request, there are specific questions that we do ask to evaluate such variance. So a couple of these pertain to whether or not the variance is going to impair the health, safety, comfort, and general welfare of the public. Is it going to be contrary to our comprehensive plan or any other ordinances? Is it proposing a use that is not otherwise allowed? Is it greater than necessary to accomplish the landowner's objective? Did they explore alternatives before getting to this final conclusion, which could reduce or eliminate the request, and so forth. So the findings that we've put together are basically looking at these questions and seeing how the proposal tonight kind of fits into or answers these questions in order to grant a variance. So we did come up with 5 findings based on our evaluation of this proposal. And the first finding in regards to granting a variance for this property to encroach into the wooded steep slopes and its setbacks. So the first finding is the property in question cannot be put to a reasonable use under the current regulations and setbacks. So if we refer back to that colored exhibit that we put together, it's roughly about a 500 square foot buildable area within that little red portion of buildable space. So if we ask the question of reasonableness of that, we don't come to a conclusion that 500 square feet is a reasonable use of the property. Typical homes range in size from 1,500, up to the very max of 3,000, even 4,000 square feet in size. So 500 square feet is just not comparable nor reasonable to utilizing the land. It would be more so equivalent to them being able to put up an accessory building on the property. Secondly, staff feels the plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to their property and not created by themselves. So to kind of expand on that, the wooded steep slope delineations and setbacks are basically a natural formation on the property. So this is something that was not created by them that got them into this challenging situation. So we would feel that the plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to their property. Thirdly, staff also feels that the variance, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the area. So back in 1998, the plat basically anticipated the future development of this parcel for a residence. And in addition, all of the surrounding area is basically residential. So they are proposing something that fits in with the previous approvals and will also fit in with the kind of local character of the area as well. The fourth finding is that there is not a reasonable alternative to the variance. The home and driveway are proposed in a location that would be in the less invasive area on the property in terms of preserving healthy trees or good and great trees as determined by an arborist, and on the wooded steep slope. They've chosen the location on the property due to the flat character of it. It's also in the most westerly portion of the site, which would provide a little bit more separation from Track Days residents. And then the water main on the south side of the site also prohibits the building from moving any further south and away from the wooded steep slope. So they're pretty much kind of boxed into this area that they've selected for the residents that they're proposing. And then lastly, the fifth finding, the proposed home and driveway are not greater than necessary to accomplish the landowner's objective. The home and driveway were designed to be reasonable and sensitive to its context. The size of the home is not more than what you typically see in neighborhoods. So they're not asking for a McMansion or anything larger than necessary to accomplish what they need to do. It's a size home that's very typical in other neighborhoods. The driveway, on the other hand, is a little bit smaller than typical driveway widths. It's roughly at 15 feet in width, whereas we would see typically 24-foot wide driveways on newer homes, and even larger than that, up to 36 feet. So what they're proposing on the driveway side is definitely smaller than what we typically see. And again, the location of both these pieces will help preserve trees that are in good and great condition classified on the site. So with that, our recommendation tonight is that you make a motion to adopt resolution number 2020-68, which is approving the variance request to encroach into wooded steep slopes and its setbacks for a new residence on Track B of RLS number 117. Specifically a variance from section 9.9.3 of the zoning ordinance. And then based on the findings and also the conditions that are listed within that resolution. I'm happy to answer any questions. I do believe the property owner is also in attendance tonight. Councilmember Wong, I do have a couple exhibits too that you requested at the end of this PowerPoint as well, if we need to refer to those.
Questions?
Just two questions. One is like, what's to the west of the property? And just because I know what's to the west, but if one of you pull up the exhibit, just so we get a little context.
Yeah, and maybe I'll use the one that. How
close the other neighbors will be.
Yep. So here's the kind of preliminary site layout for the Hammers property. So the property in question tonight is highlighted in red here. So they are basically abutting kind of common open area and additional wooded steep slope area.
Okay, so now that water reserve that's there, now the plan, I believe the plan was that's eventually going away, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so then there's really not a lot, just be the pond and some space before there's some homes to the other side. Okay.
Right.
The other question is, like, how difficult would it be to get fire access up to that if there was like some emergency there?
They'll still be able to get access up there, but if they're so far away from the public street, then they are required to put in a fire hydrant. But they still will be able to get access up there.
What did you say they were putting in, Liz?
A fire hydrant.
But how would it?
Weren't they talking about this being sprinkled?
Right now, the house is not planning to be sprinkled. So because of that, they would be required to put a fire hydrant in if they're so far away from a public street.
Anyone else? I am really dumbfounded on this. I don't understand why are we open ourselves up to constant variances now on steep slopes? We've been pretty strong about not allowing anything happening near steep slopes. And has anything on this property changed since 1998? I mean, if you buy a property that's very challenging, is it, I don't know, is that our responsibility to make it buildable? I'm confused on this. This is rather a straight, I read this a couple times and it doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Actually, it is our responsibility, Mayor. As the city is the entity that made it a lot in our approval in 1998. So it is a buildable lot. If we didn't want that to happen, or if the city at that point didn't want it to happen, they should not have approved the registered land survey that made it a lot. And since they did make it a lot, we do have a responsibility to make sure, or to entitle them to make it buildable, because by definition, we've already said it was buildable. And at that time, they maybe should have asked some more questions, but they didn't. And so now we're kind of stuck with what happens. I guess your question in terms of precedence, you know, I think if somebody else were to come in and ask for a lot split that had questionable land associated with it, it would be incumbent upon us to ask the questions of how that was going to happen and determine if we thought that was reasonable or not. I think that to answer your, or maybe get to your question, if this were to happen today, I don't think that lot split would have been approved. But since it has been approved, we are bound to make that lot buildable, because we did say it was a lot. And so, which means that it is entitled to be buildable.
And most of the time that you guys see this wooded steep slopes, it's really in the context of a new development coming in that has not received any plat or lot approval. And so because there hasn't been entitlements given away yet, you have the ability to be able to say, well, our ordinance, you know, it doesn't allow this. And so therefore we're saying we're not going to. Kevin's exactly right. The thing that makes us different that would be able to distinguish us from any other case is the fact that we actually made it a lot.
Well, okay, so then why can't they do a smaller footprint of a house? Then it wouldn't encroach on those slopes.
Well, I think, Liz, correct me if I'm wrong, the amount of size that they would get without encroaching on that slope would be 500 square foot.
Right.
So I think the argument would be, is that reasonable? Right. So if we got challenged in court on this and the court said, the argument would be, city, why did you make this a lot? In which somebody then bought the lot with the assumption that because it's a lot, it has certain rights. And now you're only allowing 500 square foot. That's not a reasonable solution. So I think it's definitely interpretation, no doubt. But I think if we were to get challenged on this, I think we have to look at what would be reasonable. And I'm pretty certain a court would say 500 square foot home is not reasonable in size.
And also just a clarification that legally, without a variance, they wouldn't be able to build a driveway either, correct?
Right, correct.
So basically it would be a dirt road with a 500 square foot residence.
Right.
Legally.
Well, you can't even grade into the setback area, so.
You'd have to come in by helicopter.
You'd park and walk.
House.
That'd be tough with trees.
Has there been has it been looked at as a different access into the property?
There's pretty much only one access into the property. And that was, again, set up through that access easement approved back in 1998. And again, they're trying to take the best approach up that steep slope as best as they can.
So Liz, that might be more apparent if you put up the context map that you had at the very end.
Yeah, because why couldn't they come in where the old water tower is?
It's just too steep, like too short, too steep.
That's a very, very steep incline there.
Yeah,
I know how steep the incline is there. I used to go up there. But that's my, I don't, it just seems like we're really getting hamstrung here on how this is a lot. How long has this been owned, or has this been recently sold? They may know.
I think they've owned it for at least over a year, maybe 2 years.
I would make the argument that we hamstrung ourselves. It's the property owner has the right as a lot. Once the city approves that as a lot, which happened back in 1998, really who's being hamstrung at that point is us. I think Kevin's exactly right. If nothing had happened in 1998 and this entire parcel, including the one with a house on it in the front, came to you and said, we're putting a house in the front and we want to split off this lot in the back so that we can put another house. Based on the discussion I'm hearing now, you'd probably say, no way. You guys can have the house up in the front. That because that meets our steep slope, but we're not going to divide off a portion of property that's unbuildable. Because if we do, then you have a right to build on it. And so just the fact that decision was made back in 1998, it doesn't give us a lot of choice. So, now you're hitting on sort of the balancing act here is we can restrict how much in the variance that they can make the size of their home. But keep in mind, this is all, this ends up being a risk on what a court is going to determine as being reasonable.
So that said, if the council said, nope, we're not going to do the variance on this, the homeowner could come after us and say, well, I spent all this money on a lot. Now you're telling me I can't build anything on it. Or I could build something completely ridiculously small and then basically sue the city for that, for damages against all the cost of the lot plus, legal fees to remediate the situation.
Or they could ask for anything. But yeah, I think that the long and short of it is they would have a case because we made it a lot.
Yeah. So the only other way to remediate the situation is effectively to buy out the lot and say, make it an outlot of some sort.
Yep. And so the approach that staff took on this and working with the applicant is to say, okay, if we're hamstrung and we have to allow something on this parcel to occur, let's try to do it in the most reasonable way possible so that it still preserves the essence and character of the site for, what the public sees. Because, this is a visible site from Highway 41.
Yeah, that's good context. I mean, I was wondering, and I mean, to me, it comes down to making sure that, to your point, we're not setting a precedent, we're being consistent. To me, the undue hardship clauses and checks and balances kind of demonstrated that to me, that, that we're not just making an exception because we're making an exception, which made sense when I read it. What the added context I appreciate is the conversation about when that decision was made, that they have a legal obligation to be able to build, and by not allowing, by not making this exception, we wouldn't allow that. So we're alienating, impinging on their rights to build, which is interesting. So who was on that council in 98? But no, you always learn, but it is interesting. So I appreciate that context, Kevin. I will also add, I do think that what they're proposing with the grades, with the driveway patterns, with the house size is, reasonable, and they're trying to work, as Matt said, kind of the best case scenario to preserve the surroundings in the lot, and not putting a mega mansion in that space that's 4 levels high or anything like that. So I also appreciate that because they understand the situation as well.
I'd like to comment. I was a little perplexed, like the mayor, looking at this on the agenda and reading through the documentation. I appreciate, Kevin, your explanation, because I was trying to figure out why. But my concern was obviously the steep slope of the driveway, just Minnesota winters and safety and things along those lines. But I feel like looks like they did the most appropriate solutions for the space. And I thought the architectural drawings of the house is quite nice. So it seemed well thought out. But it is an interesting location. Some challenges there.
I agree with pretty much everything you said. I thought it was in a strange spot, but that makes sense now. But I think the homeowner or landowner was really thoughtful. Working with an architect to do something like that is not inexpensive. So to be so thoughtful and put all that effort into it, to at least leave the site, with a certain aesthetic was, I found impressive. So.
When I spent a number of years on the Board of Adjustment, we dealt with stuff like this all the time. And the most important piece of information here is the finding of fact that the property owner didn't create this situation. This situation was pre-existed. And, the situation existed because of either ordinances or the city creating the lot. So, that means the course of remediation is from the city's perspective, or it leaves the property owner in an untenable situation with a lot they can't use and they can't sell, because who would want to buy a lot that you can't do anything with? So, to me, that's the only reasonable remediation, is to allow that property owner to build this, because otherwise it leaves them basically backed into a corner, having spent a ton of money on something that they can't do anything with.
Right.
Seems awful strange to me. I don't know, because that first house was there long before 1998, and I don't get. This doesn't even make any sense to me. Now this driveway is going to be blacktopped, correct?
No, it will be permeable pavers, so that'll help kind of with the drainage on the site as well.
Has police and fire looked at this location?
They have, yes.
All right. Kevin, is there anyone on Zoom that has any interest or has any comments, any neighbors? There's nobody in the chat. Okay. All right, folks, what's your pleasures? Unless you have any more questions.
I move to adopt resolution 2020-68 approving the variance to encroach into Wood's steep slope for setbacks of track B of RLS 117.
Motion by Councilmember Wong.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Hubbard. Discussion. I still just, in my mind, I can't see this. It's just with the rains that we currently get now and all this, and why they're building, and how good are they gonna be about protecting that? during the build and then after. All right. Councilmember Hubbard,
Yes.
Councilmember Wong,
Aye.
Councilmember Hatfield,
Yes.
Councilmember Grau,
Yes.
can't vote. I'm gonna vote nay. Can't do it. All right, passes 4-1. 4-1, so, all right. We move on to 8C, adopt resolution 2020-65, a resolution of support for Carver County's federal funding application for Highway 41 and County Road 10 mobility and access improvement.
Mayor and council members, you guys are aware, Carver County, in partnership with the city of Chaska, has been working over the past several months and doing a study on County Road 10. And really, they've been looking at the whole section that goes from County Road 11 all the way down to County Road 61. What you're seeing in front of you tonight is actually a request for the city of Chaska to support a resolution for grant funding that would help us to be able to get a pretty significant amount of dollars to be able to help fund getting the section completed between Bavaria Road and Park Ridge Drive. So basically going all the way down to the community center. And really, as the council is aware, this has been one of the high priority sections of road within the city to get accomplished. Now, they're not completely done with their process yet, but the timing of this application process is now. And so the intent would be to try to get the application in now, seek funding, and then finish up the process, which Jake will talk a little bit about, so that we can get this timed, so that we can get this built as soon as possible after the study is completed. So with that being said, we do have, geez, these windows just keep on changing all over. There he is, Jake. Jake Bongard from Bolton and Mink is here to basically just talk a little bit about where the project is now and how this grant would positively impact getting this project completed. We also have Angie Stenson from Carver County who can answer any questions on the county's behalf. So I'll turn it over to Jake.
All right, thanks, Matt. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm gonna share my screen here. If I can get this figured out. Oh, here we go. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Nope.
All right.
Hey, don't worry about the silence. It's okay.
Let's see. Oh, here we go.
There we go.
All right, great. All right, well, thank you. And as Matt said, we have been working on this. And if you all remember, we did visit with you folks back on May 4th to really discuss the eastern sub area, we'll call it, from Trunk Highway 212 to CASA 61. So as Matt mentioned, with this project, we did establish some recommendations that we shared at that May 4th meeting. And shortly following that, we submitted applications for the regional solicitation program on May 15th. And as part of that, we do request letters of support from the local agencies to back those projects. And with COVID, there was a little bit of a delay in the need to submit those, but we are looking to provide that here soon, just to be considered as part of the scoring criteria with the applications later this month or coming up here soon. But yeah, what I wanted to do here today was just provide a good recap of the different projects that were submitted as part of the regional solicitation, talk through some of the details of those quickly, and then just give a good outline of the cost like Matt mentioned. So with the two projects that were submitted, the first one is the Highway 10 and 41 expansion project. And like Matt said, it's from Bavaria Road to Park Ridge Drive, includes a 4-lane divided section through the corridor with roundabouts at Bavaria Road and Park Ridge Drive, and an improved traffic signal with some roadway expansion on Trunk Highway 41. And also looking at some improvements to pedestrian facilities along the route, including a grade separated underpass of the east leg of the intersection being Highway 10, really to provide a nice connection across Highway 10 on the east side of the road up to Chaska Middle School. Let me see if I can zoom in here. Beyond that, little has changed since we last discussed. I guess what has happened is we've put a little bit more time into our cost estimates that we've prepared for both this application as well as the other application that was submitted as part of the regional solicitation program. And this was a city-backed project that was also submitted, being that north underpass of Highway 41 along with the intersection. So just a little background as to why that underpass isn't currently included within this 10 and 41 expansion project. It was submitted as a separate project, and the intent is if both projects receive funding that they could be built collaboratively to really achieve that full vision and get as much funding as we possibly could. So with the two projects, outlining the costs of each, so that 10 and 41 roadway expansion, so that's that full project. We ran some cost estimates on that and really incorporated the county's cost participation policy. Also had a lot of good conversations with the city of Chaska and Matt Clark and pulling together some city utility costs or utilities that would be improved along with this project, just as the road is being ripped up, go in there and improve some of the water main along there. So really trying to get a good all-encompassing cost of what we'd expect to see with the project. And really what we're coming out at right now for it is about $13.8 million in construction costs for that 10 and 41 expansion project, with the split being about $1.8 million to MnDOT, $8 million to Carver County, and about $4 million to the city of Chaska. The MnDOT allocated funds are really, we don't know exactly who's going to take care of those yet, but just from a roadway perspective, we just wanted to split it out to understand where things would fall. So for context, we're looking at about a $13.8 million project, and that is all inclusive for construction from Bavaria over to Park Ridge Drive, as well as those improvements on Highway 41. With the addition of regional solicitation funds, so if we were successful in our application, the requested amount that we had with that application was a little over $9 million. So as you can see, that $9 million would get pushed straight into that 13.8 and essentially just really knock down the costs of each of the participating agencies. So you can see MnDOT's cost would go from about 1.8 to 600,000, Carver County's from 8 million to about 2.8, and the city of Chaska's from about 4 million to 1.4. So the benefits of that regional solicitation would be spread throughout the different agencies that would be participating in the costs on this project.
So Jake,
Yep.
is it the end number in all of that, or is it the front column? Because now you're tacking on, at the end, we're tacking on another 400. So we still got to
you
add.
can only use the regional solicitation dollars for the actual construction. You can't use it for any of the design or, the administration or right of way or things like that that goes on during the project. So it would just reduce the actual construction cost.
Right, but the actual cost is at the end. It's not. So go up a little bit, Jake, on your screen.
Yeah, it'd be 1.9 for us.
Yeah, so not 1.4, it's 1.9.
Yep.
And I just want us to be clear on
I'm sorry.
numbers.
Correct.
Not using just construction costs.
Yep.
Correct.
The one thing I did want to point out on this is that, and this makes sense, but Carver County is using their CIP cost share for this, which generally is about 20% of the cost is associated with cities, with 80% being covered by the county. The reason this shows a little bit higher than the 20% is because any of our utilities that we need to deal with during the construction is something that are ours and we have to deal with them. So as Jake said, Matt Clark provided the provide the engineers with the estimates for our utilities as well. And so what you're looking at the 1.9 is really the all-in cost.
I just wanted to make sure that I was reading that right, that that's the number we should be talking.
Yep. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, and I kind of glossed over that piece, but so yeah, the construction cost, like Matt mentioned, is that first one. Then we are also looking at right-of-way and then engineering, construction, administration costs. So that all boils into what that total cost is. And we are still working on the right-of-way costs and some of these other elements. So these are tentative to change, but it should provide a pretty good idea of where the costs are headed here. And with, I guess, providing a resolution or a letter of support for the regional solicitation application, it by no means holds you to these costs. It's something that'll probably continue to be worked out even in the concept phase and the preliminary design, but it's the best information we have available, and it's what we've shared as part of the application.
One thing that we did talk about with the county too is, the section of road that we're talking about here is really the highest priority section. It's that section between Engler and Park Ridge. It's a section that needs it now. They have done the study or are completing the study for everything going down to Highway 61, but I think it's going to be quite some time before you ever see the improvement of County Road 10 to the east of Park Ridge Drive. And one of the concerns that we have as a city is that we've been waiting a long time to get a trail section from the community center down to our ravine trail system, which is down sort of by the entrance to Brandondale. And it's probably one of the heaviest used segments of non-trail that we have in the community. And so one of the things that Carver County agreed to look at when we actually do this project is how we come up with some affordable temporary solution to be able to get some kind of a trail access in from the community center down to that ravine trail system, so that we can get that done all as one project, as opposed to having to wait until that road is completely reconstructed. At least from staff's perspective, we just felt that was too long a time to wait for something that really is needed right now. So really with this project, it would accomplish most everything that is of highest priority to the city of Chaska through in this corridor through the city. They even said they'd pay for it all.
As someone who broke their bike chain over there on that trail and had to walk up the road by the community center, that would be fantastic if we had a connecting trail there, because it was kind of scary.
Yeah, it sort of narrows and widens as different street accesses come.
Yes, it does.
And certain areas are more scary than others, but it would be a great improvement. And I was just joking about the paying part. We'd gladly accept Carver County paying for, the first section of trail, Carver County Trail ever through the city of Chaska. Just crickets to that. I don't know.
It only makes sense to me.
Yeah. Obviously, two things really stand out to me in this is obviously has a major impact on our cost to be able to get this project done. This does allow us to bring this project into a financially feasible realm using our MSA dollars. And I think, even though it's still 4 years off, 4 years off for a project of this magnitude, it's within the foreseeable future, which I think is something that I'm not so sure we expected initially going through the study now. Now, obviously we have to get these dollars, but potentially provides us a pathway to be able to get this project done sooner than later. The other thing I'll point out is there is still the public process going on for this. So this isn't saying that this is the absolute final section of road. They will be back. Carver County will be back probably in the next couple months here after this process has been completed, to be able to present to you the comments that they've received during the public process and what they're sort of recommending as a final section, to give one final chance for the city to look at and say, does this look okay to us?
Exactly. And I think with that conversation too, Matt, we plan to build onto that and talk about some of the Western Project sub area elements too, the Creek Road improvements, other Highway 10, Creek Road, and some of those elements too to the west. So really looking for an opportunity come probably late September, October to again, yeah, sit down with this group and share those final recommendations and what we've heard from the public and on each of those elements. So, but yeah, today, like Matt said, we're really looking to just get buy-in for a letter of support for regional solicitation application, just to check that box and continue to move forward with an important project for the county and the city.
Okay, any questions for Jake or staff?
And the regional solicitation would go back through Met Council and TAB, right?
Correct. Yep.
Yep. Cool.
The clarification, you had talked about that you had not submitted with the underpass kind of in the White Oak neighborhood, but you hope that they would be together when come time for construction, right? That they were
Actually, they have been submitted.
Yeah, so the reason for that one, so that one was a project that was sponsored by the city of Chaska. So today we don't need a letter of support for that one, just because it kind of went the inverse on that one, where the city of Chaska submitted that and Carver County provided the support on that one. But that one is also working its way through the regional solicitation project, and we should find out in the near future on how that one could potentially score.
Would that be beneficial to be put in a project, because then that would be the safer routes to school? That gets extra points and stuff like that versus separate? Crickets?
Yeah, we did choose to split that one out. We felt it was, we had a good pedestrian project with the inclusion of the pedestrian crossing of the east leg. And just from a funding perspective and the maximum award that can be provided with the project through the regional solicitation application, that our best opportunity to attain funding for both was to submit them separately.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Jake, can you go to the overall map, please?
Yeah, happy to.
I got a call from a resident that said that they didn't believe they were getting the notices. So they would be on the southeast corner. Yeah.
The Bavaria roundabout.
Yeah, at the Bavaria roundabout, right there, that property. Oh, back up. Nope, the other way.
Right there.
No, the one with the pool. Wouldn't it
That
be
one
up-
right there. No, up one.
one up. It's one up right there. Oh.
Down. Right there.
All right, it must just be looking a little different. I think it's this. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. She was really upset about and said, I said, well, there's been 3 or 4 meetings, and she said she wasn't aware of it, didn't know if that it saw it, but we got to make sure that she gets involved in this next phase if we can. Their last name is Heights. I missed her first name when she called. But I just want to make sure that property gets included.
Oh yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll make a note of that. We go through our standard process of finding address and sending out notices, and sometimes they just slip through the cracks. So we'll be sure she's connected in going forward.
Good, thank you. All right, so we just need a motion. I mean, we're all done, right, Jake?
Yep.
So we just need a motion again that basically we're just writing a letter of support, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. All right. This is, to me, is a no-brainer. So if anyone's willing to make that, or if there's any other questions. Kevin, anybody on Zoom? Okay. All right. Then if someone would be willing to make a motion to adopt resolution 2020-65, resolution of support for Carver County's federal funding. So moved. Motion by Councilmember Grau.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Hatfield. Discussion. Hearing none. Councilmember Wong.
Aye.
Councilmember Hatfield.
Yes.
Councilmember Grau.
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard.
Yes.
Wind shuttle, yes. Passes 5-0. All right. Just real quick, I'm still, my brain is still on 8B. I just want to mention something here to the council so it doesn't get lost, is that one of the things that we as a council do is, we want to always make sure that we look at things that won't tie councils down in the future. And whether or not this lot was a split for political reasons or friends or whatever, I can't answer any of that. But we always got to make sure that we make the right decision for the greater good of the city of Chaska, and to make sure that a council sitting here doesn't have to look at and say, that council in 220, I can't believe they made that decision. So it's just something I wanted to bring up and mention to all of us. I know, most of you are fairly new, and I think that that's an important thing that we need to do, is that our goal is looking out to the future. What are we doing, and making sure we're doing it right, and we're not doing it politically. We're doing it for the right reason for the city of Chaska. So I just needed to make that comment. I should have done it during that motion, but I just wanted to get that out there to everyone. So, okay. All right. Now let's get back on track. Sorry about that. 8D is adopting resolution 2020-72, and that's to deploy funding provided by the CARES Act.
Mayor and Councilmember, I'm going to turn this one over to Nate.
Council members, this is a pretty lengthy staff report that I presented to you in the council packet, outlining the city's or the staff's recommendations for how we use the CARES Act dollars that were allocated to the city back in June of this year. So the city of Chaska received just over $2 million, $2,081,049 to be exact. And there are some general guidelines around that for how those dollars get used. From the federal level, the guidance is that the funds be used to meet three overarching tests. The first one is that it's a necessary expenditure and that the expenditure is due to COVID-19. The second is that it's not accounted for in the most recent budget. And then the third would be that it was incurred within the covered period, which for Minnesota cities is March 1st, 2020 to November 15th, 2020. So our ability to expend these dollars has a hard deadline of November 15th of this year. In addition to those guidelines, staff has applied a few goals to make our projects relevant to what we're trying to achieve here locally. And so what we're trying to do is advance the city's emergency operations goal to secure continuity of services while keeping the public and staff safe from COVID-19. Protect the city's financial position by utilizing the funds for expenses incurred for COVID-19 response. And then also to assist the community to fill unmet needs resulting from the impacts of COVID-19. So those are sort of the three goals that get us to the recommendations that I'll be explaining in a little bit.
You have that in an easy sheet that you're following. We got like.
Sure, yeah, it's outlined in the staff report. The staff report was updated earlier today and republished.
I'm having a hard time accessing.
Yeah, I
some of the
can't,
documents.
that's the same thing I was doing.
It keeps failing on me. It says
Yeah,
an error has occurred.
First two I couldn't get into.
Oh, okay. Kevin, I don't know if
I'm
is
trying
there a way
on my
to.
computer here and see if
Yeah, you can share your screen. I could share my screen. One moment, let me up.
Yeah, I can't.
Our opening.
One moment, let me see if I can get it up here, Kevin.
Not even the RFA is opening.
Okay, I'll do that. I'll share my screen. Sorry about that.
It opened earlier.
This one right here.
I reloaded and I'm worse now.
Yeah, I'm worse than I was because I was able to read it Sunday.
See it on your Zoom.
Right, I gotta go back to Zoom. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that. And so there, what you can see right now are the three federal tests that we need to apply, and then the three goals that I outlined that the city has created for these. And then we do have that November 15th deadline. So over the last few months, anticipating that these dollars would be coming from the federal government through the state, we did start working with Leeway Daily Architects and RJM Construction Management to evaluate our facilities as they've been impacted and unable to operate. In particular, City Hall, has remained closed well, not closed, by appointment only since the shutdown occurred. So we engaged with them to do a review of our facilities. We've also done some evaluation internally with staff to identify needs. And we've also been in communications with the Carver County CDA as they've been putting together some programs to assist the business community and also residents of Carver County. And so what I'm going to do here is walk you through the priorities that we have for these expenses. What I want you to understand is that I'm putting up to amounts here that we would put towards these different priorities, and that what staff would request is some level of flexibility to be able to carry this forward. Given we've gotten the November 15th deadline, and this has been a very quickly evolving project, especially on the building changes that I'm going to be talking to you about, working with Leeway Daily and RJM. The expenses for some of these projects aren't fully understood quite yet. And so how we would do this is we would expend the dollars in line with the priorities as I'm outlining them. And then assuming money remains to do the next priority, we would then allocate those funds to that one and so forth. So I don't know if you have any questions on that approach, but I'll outline the priorities here next.
Has there been any talk about extending that, seeing that state sat on that money so long?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I think part of that is it's a federal answer to a state problem. And so, Minnesota decided to take some time making its decision. And so now we would be dependent on the feds to sort of help us make up for that. I know that there is discussion out there about whether there's an extension or not, but until that decision's made, we have to assume it's November 15th.
All right.
If as it stands right now, if the dollars aren't expended by November 15th, we need to return them to the county, and then the county gets a little time with it, and then they would return it to the state and then the feds.
If it's returned to the county, does the county have an option to use it, or is it just to hold it and send it back?
I believe the county would have some opportunity to use it, and that's just due to how the dollars flowed per the federal guidelines that release the dollars, and then
they would have the opportunity to use it, and my bet would be is that they probably would try to use it towards more of the business loans.
Yeah,
right.
That's a good.
Good. I figured, if the county was going to use it, that's what they would do with it, but I wasn't sure when it went to the county if it could be used yet, or if it was just there as a holding pattern to be returned.
So our goal here by asking for the flexibility and by outlining what I'm about to explain here is really, hopefully we can use the dollars here. Our goal is not to be returning dollars if at all possible. And so priority one, what we want to do is expenses related to emergency response, reopening the Chaska Community Center, and containing city operations. So being able to recover those using the CARES Act dollars. The estimate cost for that is we're putting up to $500,000. So as of today, we have approximately $100,000 that we've identified that would be eligible for CARES Act reimbursement that went into work needed to be done for reopening the community center. So obtaining supplies, rerouting electricity so we could bring out the fitness equipment and provide spacing, some of those things. We've got about $100,000 of cost there. We also have approximately another $200,000 of costs we've already accumulated for emergency response, getting supplies for our fire police department. And there's some other supply items and legal fees and things like that that have been acquired related to our response to the COVID situation. And so those immediately would be able to be recaptured. And then we want to put some buffer room in there because between now and November 15th, the city will continue to incur costs as it relates to its emergency response to COVID. So that would be the first priority. The second priority would be to implement improvements necessary to reopen the Chaska Library, City Hall, and ensure the continued operational safety of the community center. So for this one, we do have Leeway Daily and RJM here to talk about their role in this project. I will briefly kind of highlight this, then I'll turn it over to them to give you the details of what we're attempting to do. The improvements were identified by a study that was conducted by Leeway Daily, and they'll touch on that, and RJM. We worked to prioritize the identified needs because they identified more needs than there are funds. So we want to make sure that we're meeting the overarching tests the federal guidance has. We want to bring focus and greater control to public interactions at City Hall. We want to create separated and controlled access to the library, which will give the library direct control of its operations, which it currently does not have, which has prevented their ability to reopen. We want to reduce touch points and increase sanitization at buildings with higher public access. And so to do that, like I mentioned, we would propose a separate library vestibule entrance be created. And Leeway Daily, our representative from them, will be able to talk about the details of that. But that really does provide the library full control of their facility, separates out access points for the public, which then also decreases exposure on the City Hall side as public are accessing the library. So having that separate controlled access really does a lot to enable the library to function under the guidelines that exist for COVID today, where they can't really right now. City Hall lobby renovation. So you will see on the first floor of City Hall as you enter, we're talking about a renovation there that would create allow the utility billing group to really function out of the first floor, which that being our highest customer service function that we have out of City Hall, focuses that point of interaction to the first floor by the entryway rather than requiring people to go up to the second floor in some cases as they do right now. And so that really helps to limit the interaction and the potential exposure to staff as they start re-engaging with City Hall as well. City Hall level 2 renovation. So there's a number of things that you will see are being proposed there. One would be a new window to do transactions for building permits. So that would help focus, again, that customer interaction to a single location, and would help to focus that conversation to be directly with building official staff, as opposed to now at the generalized window that exists. There's multiple staff that need to interact with customers that maybe don't really necessarily have to with this improvement. So that protects staff and customers to City Hall in that way. We would also propose that the city administrator's office, so Matt's office, be moved to what is currently called the planning conference room, which then with utility billing staff moving to the first floor and Matt moving his office would free up that whole space in City Hall to create a new conference room / break room space, which if you've seen our break room space right now, it's quite small. So under current social distancing guidelines, I think you could fit 2 people in there max at one time. And also our meeting spaces are quite small as well. So under current social distancing guidelines, you could probably meet with 2 people, maybe 3 people in any of our conference rooms. This expanded space would allow for 6 to 8 people to meet. And then we can also have more flexibility with how we're handling our lunches and in a safe way. So that's the intent with that. Then we have the police department office area upgrades. So right now, I don't know if you've toured our police department recently, but that space is extremely cramped. The space that our patrol officers use is a shared space with no division in it, where they're all very much working on top of each other. So we would convert that space to have dedicated sort of cube spaces for 3 different officers to be able to come in, do their office related work, and have that separation to keep them safe while they're working. If you have toured that space and you recall the detective office area, I think we have currently 6 detectives crammed into, I don't know, it might be a 20 by 20 space if I'm being generous. And so that's an extremely cramped space for them. Does not allow for proper social distancing. So what we're proposing is the Sally Port that exits onto Pine Street be converted into an office space, which would then allow for 3 spaces to be properly distanced. Remove those, 3 of those out of the currently cramped space that they're in, and then that allows folks who remain there to have the appropriate distance between their spaces as well. So now we've got places where our detective staff can work in an appropriately safe location. Next, moving to the community center, we're looking at automated doors at the main entrance and also the ice arena entrance. Those are our highest used and highest traffic entrances in the building. Right now, they are not automated, and so that's a major touch point for the building. And so we want to address those and remove those touch points by making those doors automated. And finally, we're looking at HVAC ionization upgrades, and I'm going to allow our architect to dig into the details of what that exactly means. But I can tell you what they are is they're inserts into the HVAC system that helps with circulation and cleaning the airflow. And recognizing that COVID has been found to circulate in buildings that don't have proper HVAC systems, which would be the status of ours today. These ionizers would confront that and make for a clean air supply and limit that circulation. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Leif Ivikson, who is the architect that we're working with at Leo A. Daly. And what we'd be proposing tonight is a contract that would enter into work for them to go to final design to pull off this project.
Before we start, it's obvious we're trying to get a new library. And what are all these things that we're doing? How is that going to affect if the library, we do get the new building and we go through the major remodel we've been talking about? How much of this is just got to go away then?
I would say that most of this probably goes away, is very likely to go away. And I wouldn't suggest that any of this prevents the need for the library expansion. The fact remains is that actually the library space will get smaller as a result of this, as you'll see when Leif talks about the new vestibule for entrance. That's going to take up space the library currently has inside of it. So the need for an expanded library remains. And this project isn't going to address the space needs that we have for City Hall staff as we continue to implement our staffing.
I'd actually, it's interesting that the mayor brings this question up, because one of the things that we have found really difficult throughout this entire process, working with the state government and with the federal government, is to get clarification on what we can use the dollars for. And I will tell you that Nate and I have both gone round and round with state officials and legal officials and everything about what's allowed. And the best guidance they can give are the 3 the three criteria that Nate put in the report is, that it's COVID related, that it's a necessary expenditure, and that we didn't have it budgeted before. But one of the comments that they've made is that they don't want to see these dollars used for things that would be permanent improvements that basically have been put off by local governments to basically use somebody else's dollars to do something that they should have done before. That's why I think it's really important when Nate points out that none of these things that we're talking about now, we probably would ever have done, but for COVID and the fact that these dollars exist to deal with it. We've really struggled with trying to figure out how to open up City Hall safely to the public and to have as many staff necessary there to be able to allow for walk-in traffic. Every one of the rest of our buildings that really needs to have that public interaction, we've been able to really address it because we have the space. City Hall, the reason we haven't opened it up yet is because we just haven't been able to meet that. So I think the fact that these improvements are temporary, and temporary for us is going to be probably in that 3 to 4 year time period, probably better meets the definition of what the federal government would like to see us use these dollars on than something that would just make our City Hall usable for another 20 years.
Okay, thanks. I mean, I know that these are all things that we have to do to just get opened up, but I was just curious if we, looked at the fact that, that could be happening in the time period. But again, we got to get open and get functioning again too, and we probably can't wait that long. So.
Well, and honestly, I mean, it's sort of baffled me a little bit in this whole process. Is to me, it would be a lot more strategic to think that way. To think about how you could kill two birds with one stone. But that's not really what the federal government wants these dollars used for. They want them for temporary improvements to open it up. And quite frankly, with the timeline that we have to do this, we just don't even have the time to really even think strategically about how we do something that would be less than temporary.
Yeah, I know it's a short time frame, so.
Yeah.
All right, I'm good. Thank you.
I was going to add, I just think it's interesting because I was thinking the same comments, like someone out there who maybe hasn't read into the details of kind of what the federal government said is going to say, well, why are you going to spend this money? It's money. Yes, it's available. Well, why would you spend it if you don't have to spend it because you're going to fix the problem right here, right? And I understand the logic of getting open, especially in the City Hall there. The thing that jumped out to me was the touch points. And just a comment from my work life is that during H1N1, I work in a large manufacturing company that has a lot of doors. And in H1N1, we spent money to make automatic door openers. So every time you entered one space to another, and I don't know how many times I've been in the building now with COVID, X amount of years later, and go, that was a really good decision because we eliminated every one of those touch points. So I think like when you look at the community center, that is a little longer term because the next, influenza is always here, right? I mean, but the next virus that could occur, because it will happen, you do kind of look and say, this is a good decision now that fixes a problem right now, but it'll also help address problems in the future, which I think is beneficial. Because like I said, it's amazing how many doors you touch when you're thinking about how many doors you touch. So I just want to say that. So
everybody else good? All right. Sorry, go ahead.
Evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Leif Ikevic. I am a project manager with Leo A. Daily Architects. We work very closely with a lot of municipalities and cities across the state, across the country. With me here is Kaylin Hepner, who is our senior mechanical engineer. Kaylin and I have been through all of the facilities at length and helped put together this memo that Matt and Nate commissioned. And also Brad Barrickman, who is representing RJM Construction, is effectively a partner in this as a construction manager. And so between the designer and the construction manager, we hope to push expedited decisions through the November 15th deadline with a full completion at that date.
You can take your mask off, and I think they'll be able to hear better and we'll be able to hear better.
It's on, Alex? No. Okay, can everybody hear me now? Okay. I think we're at about 24 feet social distancing, so we're CDC approved. So we've been through the assessment. We provided that about a month ago and have since taken the last couple of weeks to meet with the different user groups in some of the more priority areas to work through the layouts I'm going to show you in this presentation. We really went from about 500 action items across all of Chaska to 6 prioritized areas that we are going to focus on based on need and reopening. So you can go to the next slide, Alex. I don't think you could probably have a better description than Nate put together for the action report. If you read through those descriptions of each action item are pretty robust and pretty much cover exactly what we're planning on doing. So I'm going to just show you the graphics behind that. If you get access to this presentation, you put those two together, you'll have a pretty good understanding of what we're planning to do in the next several months here. Project goals, physical distancing, indoor air quality, and then dealing with frequently touched surfaces, primarily entries, so such as at the CCC. Go to the next one. So as I mentioned, we reduced our overall action items list to 6 scope items. The library vestibule renovation, the city hall main level lobby renovation, the city hall level 2 renovation in 2 different areas, the 2 locations at the police department, and then 2 primary entries at the CCC, and then the HVAC ionization upgrades, which I can explain briefly, but I'm not sure we want to dive into that in too much technical detail at this time of night. But we are more than happy to pull Kalen up here if we need to. So next slide, please. So I'm just going to click through the next 6 slides within every couple seconds here. We're looking at the areas affected by this project as they currently are. So you've got the main entry, the library main entry, which is going to receive a vestibule right there. This is again the main entry looking down the corridor at the conference room, which will also be affected by this. This is upstairs looking toward the city council chambers and the clerk's desk. We're in PD looking at the bullpen, which will be demolished. And then we're actually looking at a Sally port, which is more or less defunct now and can be repurposed for those additional officer desking. All of which is, almost all of these is to provide those 3 goals of reducing touch points, allowing for some level of strong social distancing for employees to come back to the office. And then what we're not showing here is anything HVAC, but really one of the things we're doing across the entire city is are these HVAC improvements, which once you've dealt with the air and the actual airflow and quality of air, you're affecting the primary way that the virus at COVID can spread in offices. So you can go to the next one, Alex. And this is just an image of the main entry to the community center here, as you all are fully aware. So I'll jump into some layouts here just so you can see exactly the changes we're making. Leo A. Daly is a full-service engineering and architecture firm. I manage the team of those engineers and architects, and we bring our full-service project experience because this will affect most of those disciplines. Everyone, a little bit of structural, mechanical and electrical. There will be a little bit of civil in this project, and then there will be heavy interiors as well, who will work very closely with Chaska's interior vendor, who has already worked on past projects with Chaska. So looking at this here, you've got the main entry into the city hall. I won't go too long on any of these, but we have effectively taken that L-shaped workspace there. We've sent it across the entire wall as you walk in on your left side. This becomes the new transaction interface. There's a door to the left there that the billing and utilities staff can pass through, and this entire area with the yellow desks becomes the billing and utilities office. It consolidates all of them, but it also allows them enough social distancing to be able to work safely all day long. And you have those 2 transaction windows, which allows a very easy passage back and forth to serve clients as needed. And then down below, if you're able to scroll just a little bit to the bottom of the screen, Alex, the library vestibule. So the primary thing happening here is on the north side of the library vestibule, you're seeing that white wall. That used to be the door. That's going to be demoed and filled back in. And then we are actually taking a part of the exterior metal panel wall, and that will be the new entrance into the library vestibule. There will be a little bit of site work. We'll re-landscape a little bit to make that more of a primary entry. And this will be a glass vestibule with full visibility in and out, and that will send you to the south towards the current desk of the library. You can go to the next one, Alex. And you might want to zoom fully out on this one and probably the next couple. So we're upstairs here. What used to be free passage into the admin area during most of the day is more of a secured area now. To the left, those two desks are the clerk and the assistant clerk. To the right is an extension of the building permits. And what this allows us to do is get a very clear public interface to the building permits group. There's a transaction window that will be along that desk there. And there will be a plan review table, and that will have direct access to the south to the current building permits team, building permit review team. So what we're doing here is we're directing all of the utility and billing customer interactions to one area in the main lobby. We're not allowing any of them to come upstairs, as many of them sometimes do. We're pulling the utility billing people out of this level 2 bullpen, which is pretty compact and does not meet the social distancing. And then we're kind of allowing things to kind of breathe a little bit upstairs and give any building permit connection to this specific area right here. You can go to the next one. And then this is something that Nate also mentioned, the break room. To the left was Matt Podrasky's office. And then to the right, it was the billing utilities bullpen. And so we've demoed the wall between that. We've made this a hybrid break room / meeting room. So those tables and chairs are movable. And there will also be a kitchenette, which will require connection back to the old drain line that used to be here in the past iterations of the building. So this will be a fully functioning open space for multiple uses on the level 2, rather than sending people down to the basement, which as a break room currently really doesn't meet almost any of the COVID CDC guidelines for distancing or air supply. So this helps multiple goals at the same time.
One of the things I'll point out real quick in this is, to me, really what this did is really sort of 2 things. Is it spread people out more so that you're able to accomplish social distancing. But the other thing it did is we, in essence, had 3 conference rooms that were unusable. So we had the Valley conference room on the 1st floor. So sort of behind the utility billing desk now. We had the Bluff conference room, which is that small one right when you come up the stairs to the 2nd floor. And then we had the community development conference room, which is actually where I'll be moving my office into. All 3 of them were spaces that we couldn't accommodate, like Nate said, more than 2 to 3 people in them. And just, they're impractical. And so what we said is, well, instead of having wasted space with these conference rooms that we can't use, let's create a break room and conference room sort of shared space that's usable, that we can actually get people into and be able to accomplish business the way we need to in a safe way. And then just use those existing break rooms to be able to spread people into. You know, the one thing that I think has really struck me about this pandemic to this point is, you know, if you think about when this started, when we closed down, it was late March, 3rd week of March. And this was a pretty nice spring and has been a really pretty nice summer. We haven't had any bad weather that we've had to have through this whole thing. And so in facilities that people have been in, it's been pretty easy for them to go out and find a picnic table or something like that to have a break. We're going to pretty quickly be getting into a time period where that's just not feasible. And if we're going to have people at work, we need to be able to have a safe space for them to have their break. And then, like I said, then the plan here would be to have it only usable for a break room from 11:30 to 1:30 every day, so we can rotate people through, and then all other hours then it'd be used as an actual conference room.
Thank you, Matt.
I was just going to ask that question, how this was going to operate as a break room and a conference room, but got it.
Are there any other questions on these two plans? There's one more police department that we'll look at before I close. If there's any questions on the City Hall, library, or this, let me know.
I have a quick question. What happens to the existing break room then? Do you guys have plans to
So the existing break room, I think, will still get used.
But it can only be used by a couple people at a time.
A couple people, yep.
Okay, I just was curious if you're converting it into something different because of this.
That's a room that gets used by all of City Hall right now, including the police department. And so I think this room will allow most of City Hall staff to take their lunches there, which frees up that space for PD. So I think that'll become, more of a space that they're using. They're the main user of.
Another item to note here is this room on the bottom right, when it was utility billing, we were told was quite loud, and there's conversation happening all the time. So by converting the lower level or the main level conference room to utility building, we allow kind of this open space and enclosed sort of phone call space. And there's potentially some flow through there depending on what people need to be doing. But you can go to the next one, Alex. If you...
The other sort of interesting note is when City Hall was first built, this is where our break room was. So it's sort of come full circle that now the break room's coming back to right where it started.
And I think we're all in a point now. I mean, we design office spaces all over the country, and we're at a point where we cannot exactly tell you what a conference room should look like, because we don't know exactly what companies are going to do or cities are going to do for new offices. So right now we're having a hybrid city council meeting. I think the idea of a single hybrid break room, meeting room probably is pretty flexible now and is probably the best approach. So last but not least, we're looking here at the police department, which is obviously a lot of functions crammed into a very small space. Ben and the PD team have been very innovative in how they move some of the officers around, and they proposed both of these solutions, which we drew up. The three major things up at the top there is the bullpen, which we're demoing all the walls, which enclose 4 or 5 officers in worst case scenarios. I'm sorry, enclose 3 officers, and we're allowing them to each have their own cubicles, which will otherwise also kind of be more of an open flow space. And then to the south there, where it was the Sally port for detainee entrance, we are closing off the garage door that you're all familiar with, adding windows to match what is currently shut on the building. We're going to put 3 desks there appropriately distanced. And then there will be a mechanical system, and there will be leveling of the floor, and all of the things that you will need to create a white box office space out of what is effectively just an industrial garage. And then there will be an additional door that will be added to the south of the plan here, exiting onto the current sidewalk. So there will be some sidewalk work that will be also required to level that out and meet the door threshold. So
I have a question on that. I don't know if it's for you, Leif, but you said Ben was involved. The patrol officers, I'm all for that garage door going. I hate hearing that garage door during council meetings, but we're like the patrol officers pretty heavily use that. So I imagine they'll just be able to use that side door instead, because that's their quickest access to get back into their cars and go. If they have to go all the way down to the garages, they could all be
that's the primary reason that door got put in the alley. Because if you look at how they use that garage door now, they open the garage door not to actually pull a car in, but to actually walk into the building.
Yeah, so that's what so they'll still be able to use that. I imagine they'll still use that then there and be okay. That was my only thought, is that if they have to go all the way down to the other garages, that's not a great thing.
Walk through the PD, there's 15 other things that probably should be done, but knowing that it's a temporary home potentially for the PD, that we picked the 3 most important. So you can go to the next one. If there's no other additional questions on PD, I've only got 1 or 2 more slides, I believe. So this is pretty important. This is so as Nate mentioned, we're being pressed into this time frame that forces us to finish by November 15th or the funds return. I know Chaska's thought a lot about this strategy here, but we're on the first square there, August 17th, seeking your permission to move forward, at which point we will have a very, very quick 3-week call it a burn, to just get to our final permit set so that the Chaska building team can review our drawings, review the specs, and RGM can jump in. RGM, to save some time, will also be handling long lead item procurement, and they'll also be dealing directly with negotiations with subs. Because this is an emergency situation, it does not go to bid. It's directly negotiated with specific, probably highest priority subs that RGM already has relationships with, and they know that can do the work the quickest at the best value. Construction is an incredibly fast 9 weeks with final completion, not substantial, but final, which means everything pencils down, hammers down on November 15th. So that date may change. Things happen slowly at that federal level, but we are currently planning on the November 15th completion deadline. So I believe the next slide is Q&A. And what I did not get into any was our mechanical solutions. We're adding a very simple but very effective piece to the ductwork in select areas such as the locker rooms in the various buildings, places that have high gathering capacity but need good quality air. Things like locker rooms, the play area in the city council, or I'm sorry, in the community center. And then other areas as well throughout the facilities. And that is something that's being handled by both RGM and Leo A. Daly. There's some additional slides after this if your technology is. It's called BIPOC. Just basically conditions the air so that the virus particles make it back to the filter rather than staying in the room for multiple cycles. It's very effective, very cost effective as well. So are there any questions for me?
So does that, now, if you're capturing the COVID virus, what does that do for our maintenance people that have to do anything or change filters?
That's a really good question. You don't have to change out any of the systems. Rooftop units, AHUs, the fan, they all stay in the place. And you locate these things at a access hatch in a duct, and it's actually magnetized to the inside of the duct. Or it can actually be put in a larger capacity in the rooftop unit itself. And the maintenance person, once this is installed, just has to go in and dust it periodically. Some of them are even self-cleaning, which I believe we've specified. So it's pretty low maintenance. It's something that really anyone on staff could do as long as there was a regular time clock for it.
It's not exposing them to any risk. I think that was a little bit of your question too.
UV, which is hazardous. It's not HEPA filters, which are expensive to be replaced. It's the same item that stays there more or less for indefinitely, and it's just kind of acts to polarize the air, to pull molecules together and send them back to the filter. So,
if it's dangerous, we nominate Nate.
Ask.
There you go.
Well, I just know from sitting in the EOC that there's been a ton of effort and a lot of time put into this study. And I know that these are the things that we need to move forward and get our buildings opened up and make them safe for whether it's customers coming in or employees. So thank you for all those efforts. I know that this is, and a 9-week time period to try to get all this stuff is going to be a challenge. And we've talked about this in our EOC about that extension of that just, I mean, there's going to be so many people. We luckily were on top of things ahead of time, but there's going to be a lot of people that aren't going to get theirs done in that time period. So thank you for doing that, and RGM being able to get all that done. That's going to be amazing. So.
I had a question. You alluded to the subcontractor's emergency contract, so there's no bid process. How is RGM selected as the primary construction? I mean, I understand that speed's important here, but I'm also just curious on how the RGM was selected or how that gets determined.
I'm more than happy to let Brad just talk to that a little bit. I can personally say that when some of our municipal clients and partners started to go into this COVID scenario, we looked for, we know a lot of contractors, and we looked for the contractors that were doing the same thing as us, which was pivoting to municipal service and facility upgrades. And I knew that RGM was doing this because they let us know that they were doing this. And so I didn't expect us to be heading towards Chaska in this capacity, but when we realized Chaska needed this work, RGM was the first group that came to mind.
I'll also share, we've used RGM for project management in the past, and so we felt really comfortable. I gotta be honest, with any group that we've used for project management like this, I've been most impressed by RGM.
Good. Yeah, I guess I understand the speed. We're also sit up here all the time, and anytime we put something to bid, and again, we don't have the time, we see multiple bidders and everything like that. So I just wanted to ask the question, but clearly understand the circumstance dictates the process a little bit, and good to hear that we're comfortable and worked with them in the past.
I think 2 firms with the bench strength to handle a quick project like this, but with the local focus to do it right. So.
All right, any other questions?
The only other thing I'll just mention again is the federal government is providing us very little guidance on what we can use these dollars for. They've just given us the 3 tests. Is it COVID related? Was it included in our budget? And is it needed to deal with the COVID emergency? We've actually reached out to the Office of Management and Budget to gave them our plans and asked them to make a determination on this so that we make sure we're spending these dollars right. They will not make a determination on this. They have no problem in the future coming back and auditing us on it, but they will not commit to saying if our project meets their criteria or not. They leave that up to us to determine. Now, with that being said, I think we've made a very good argument to show why this is really important, why it meets those 3 criteria. And I think the fact that City Hall isn't open yet, I think is a good indicator of why these improvements are necessary. So we strategically have reached out to try to get some kind of clarification on this. And we've documented that to make sure that if we ever do get audited on it, that we make sure that we clearly illustrate that we have, made the point of why we think this meets the criteria and that we asked for a determination and nobody would give it to us. I guess my only thing I would say is, I think it seems reasonable. I think as staff, we've looked at and seen reasonable. If there's something that you don't feel comfortable with, please let us know, because it's the risk we take in these types of things when we receive no direction, and nobody's authorized to give us any direction. We just have to sort of go on faith that we truly believe we're doing the right thing here, and really believe that if we don't do these things, we just can't effectively open up City Hall safely. So I throw that out there because I think it's important for you guys to know as part of this decision, but it's not that we haven't tried to get an answer. Nobody will give us one. And we've talked to our city attorney about it, Larry Harris, and I think he's felt that it seems like a logical argument, and that we've taken all reasonable steps to try to get a determination, and we understand that we're likely not going to get that. So I throw it out there because it's important for you to know. I don't know that we know what else to do to protect ourselves other than that.
So just to be clear, that if for the bulk of the money that's focused on City Hall, if we don't spend it, then from the public perspective, we just wouldn't be able to open City Hall as is, at least with the current guidelines.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be really difficult for us to get people back to actually provide those services that we would normally provide, just because we don't have the space to do it. I think probably we'd probably have to look at continue to do some kind of appointment, if appointment-based type system. So if there's people with utility billing that absolutely needed to come in, that we do some kind of appointment-based system. But I honestly think we're going to be dealing with this for 9 months to a year. And That's a long time for the public not to be able to get into City Hall.
Thanks.
Agreed. You know, we got to start getting back. We got to learn how to live with it. And I think this is a great way to go ahead and be able to live with it and still function and still protect our employees, which has been since we started this, it's been our number one goal. So.
Well, and also the way we're separating these counters too, it's protecting our customers. It's protecting the people who are coming in and doing transactions with them, to try to separate people as much as possible. And the other thing with the library, I don't know if you remember the last library report we got, but I think they said they had like 500 to 550,000 guests a year at the library. Every one of those people unnecessarily walk past our employees in a very close distance as they come in. It's just not a good situation.
Right. Right. All right. Any other questions here? I'm very comfortable in just knowing the amount of detail that's been put into this project. I don't need to say that sets off a red flag that said we shouldn't be doing that. It's you know, I just feel confident that we're going about doing it is the right thing, and with the tight timeline, being able to get it done is just huge. So,
Mayor and Council, there's one more priority that I outlined in my staff report, so I don't want to stop you from the building conversation. So once you're done with that, I just want to make sure we cover that one other priority.
I think we're ready to go ahead and cover it. Are you going to be able to share your screen again, please?
All right. Priority 3, and this would be up to $200,000. This contains a few items here. The first one would be that the city, as we pivoted to a more remote work environment for staff, there have been some IT infrastructure needs identified that would be security enhancements that allow staff to securely access our city servers, or more securely access our city servers in a situation where they're working from home for a more extended period, as we look at the COVID pandemic lasting for a longer period of time here. So there's some of those IT changes that would be eligible for CARES Act dollars that we could allocate these funds to if there's still dollars remaining after the first 2 priorities are complete. The other area would be working with the CDA and some of their programs that they've put forward. So one is a program to support small businesses. And that's a program that qualifying businesses can be awarded based on a randomized selection process. So the CDA has recently released this program to the community. They're soliciting applications right now, and the city would have the opportunity to contribute dollars to that program. And those dollars would be only eligible to Chaska businesses that are located in Chaska. And that's another one is that the CDA is doing a number of things to address homelessness and assist with housing right now. And so we're talking to CDA about potential approaches that could be taken on that side of things as well, that the city could contribute to. But again, these are assuming that dollars remain after the first 2 priorities that I outlined. On the business side, we do need to make a decision about that one by September 1st. And so, assuming we're moving forward after tonight, we'll be working with RJM and with Leo A. Daly to, come to a max project cost. That would be an amendment to the agreement that we're presenting to you all that we would enter into with them. And that's something that, council's of the resolution would authorize staff to do at that point. And that would give us the ability to understand the budget well enough to make a determination on the CDA participation side. If we've got the money to do that, we would be bringing that to you at the August 31st meeting, so we can get that approval from you to be able to participate in the CDA's program.
We'll have enough cost estimates to know that by August 31st?
Yeah. Yep. So we'll be entering into with RJM and with Leo A. Daly. And so by entering into that, we know that the project will be more than that number. And so assuming that number is an amount that, in addition to the other priorities, that we still have some left over, that would give us.
Now, this is only the CARES Act money. We're not putting anything into it, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So if we end up in these cost estimates on priorities 1 and 2 are higher, then 3 probably doesn't happen.
Correct.
Or unless we use city dollars for like the security stuff that we need, right?
Yes, that's right.
But the CDA, then we probably wouldn't be able to do that.
Identified a city fund. Yeah, that's right. Not using CARES dollars.
Okay. Right now, I guess I didn't realize we had a step 3. So are we good now on the presentation?
Yes, those are the 3 priorities that we're recommending.
All right. All right. Again, I'll go back to questions for anyone. All right, then I would look for a motion to adopt 2020-72, to deploy funding provided by the CARES Act.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Hatfield.
Second.
Second by Councilmember McGraw. Discussion.
Wong.
Wong, I'm sorry. Second was by Wong. All right, discussion, nothing? All right, Councilmember Hatfield.
Yes.
Councilmember McGraw.
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard.
Yes.
Councilmember Wong.
Aye.
And Winchell, yes. Passes 5-0. Awesome. All right, thank you. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. All the efforts and quick turnaround. Now we just got to get her done. All right, that ends our action items. We move into bills. Anyone have a question on bills?
I got some. Let's see. Pages 2 and 13. There's some line items on page 2 is for Jamie Arvig for August rebate for solar panels, and there's another August rebate for solar panels for Ryan Jacobitz. Is this a pass-through program from MMPA, and what's the program that this is operating under?
This is our conservation improvement program. So these are the dollars that were the 1.5% of our profits annually that we're required to spend on things that help reduce energy consumption in our community. And so private businesses, private individuals can apply for those dollars if they're reducing their energy consumption. So these would be 2 households that have installed solar panels.
Gotcha. So by installing that, they get a rebate for that. In addition, is that in addition to the energy savings?
Well, the energy savings will just come through purchasing less from us, which is sort of a unique objective that we're actually giving people money to spend less with us. But that's the way the program works, is that the state requires that we demonstrate that we've reduced 1.5% of our energy consumption each year. So we try to create incentives to do that.
Okay, got it. So on pages 3 and 6, there's ones for this PAYGO note payments. One's for 25 Clover and the other one's for 5 Chaska something. Those were to BMO Harris on page 3 and then Chaska Heights Senior Living on page 6.
Yeah, so these are 2 affordable housing TIF districts. And we have PAYGO notes that go to those each year. So basically, every 6 months, we look at what tax increment was generated on the property. And we provide a rebate for the note back to them of everything minus, every 6 months minus $250 per unit. every year, $500 per unit. And those dollars are then what go to fund our Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
So in this case, like BMO Harris and Chaska Heights are the lien holders of the property.
Yep. So as they go through and set up the financing, basically what happens is those notes get assigned directly over to the main financier of the project, because that's part of their mortgage payment back.
Okay, got it. Page 4, there's an item for Carver County Public Health, Planning and Water. It's an irrigation. It's cut off, so it's like irrigation efficiency grant. Is that what it is? Is that for a watershed district that we're funding?
No, it's actually, well, sort of. We received a grant that basically we're working with Carver County. If you actually go on our website, there's a nice article on it that basically we received grant dollars to be able to provide to Carver County, who's administering a program to be able to provide smart sensors for people to put on their irrigation systems. And basically what they are is they're a Wi-Fi system that picks up forecasts and actual rainfall and are deployable, or you can turn them off, turn them on through your mobile device. And really the goal of it is to try to only use water when it's necessary. Instead, not everybody has the smart systems put in that regulate it based on actual rain. So this is a program that's open to our residents. It's on our webpage. They can get information on how they can actually apply to get a grant to receive one of these. I don't know what the contraption you put on your irrigation device to be the
controller. It's called the controller.
Explain that really clear.
Yeah. It's a device.
Yeah, it's a device.
It's a thingamabob.
It's a device that does something to something.
It has a big red button on it.
In the end, less water is used.
Okay, so let's see, page 6. There's an item that it's going back to City of Chaska for a pool lighting rebate. Is this just going to pay us back through enterprise funds?
This is again through our conservation improvement program.
Yeah.
So we like to find projects that actually that we too can save money. And so basically our community center applied for the conservation improvement program dollars for putting in energy efficient lighting in the pool area as part of the renovation. And then just like any other business, our community center can qualify to receive dollars from our CIP program to basically pay for those improvements.
Okay, got it. Pages 11 and 12, there's an item for, this is our usual cleaning vendor. And I noticed the one that jumped out at me was the Stantec building. It's not one of our usual facilities. And Stantec's one of the vendors we use for engineering services. So how come we're cleaning their building?
So we lease space to them. It's actually, if you're familiar with the municipal service building, across the street from our municipal service building on Old Victoria Drive, there's the what used to be Llano Sanitation. We purchased that a long time ago. A lot of it became cold storage and warm storage for our utilities, but there was an office space in the warm building that we leased to Stantec for their on-site employees for, I bet you, 15 years.
Okay, so this is across from Public Works then?
Yep.
Okay, got it. And then
You get it back in lease payments.
Yep.
So effectively this is just, we're actually making money off of this, but it's just part of the service that's part of the lease agreement.
Yep.
Okay, page 16, Minnesota Department of Transportation. Why is this one's for an interchange job cost transfer? And I guess this is usually, I'm expecting to see these as part of like a wire transfer versus an expense. So I was wondering if there was a reason why this one was popping out there.
Yeah, only payroll and a few other vendors are actually set up as direct wires. Most payments we make are still through check transaction.
Okay.
So it's not unusual for any of our construction projects to be like this. We don't have a lot of direct wires set up, and primarily because these are not regular ongoing things. These are, in a contract we might have 6 payments,
Okay.
and then the project is done. So we only do it for those things that are just ongoing all the time.
Yeah, like the bond payments or things like
Yeah.
that. Yep.
Yep.
Okay. And then the last one is there's this one. I'm guessing this was related to the one up above. This was under page 22. There's an SB Chaska Partners. This was also another pay-go note. So I'm guessing this is the same thing of another one of the another TIF district.
Yep. Same thing, just a different building. It's actually Chaska Place Apartments, right next to the fire station.
Okay. Sounds good. And that's all I got. Thank you, Matt.
Yep.
All right, anyone else have questions?
I just one comment because it jumped out to me when you were looking at the bills and I didn't want to interrupt you, was just how for lack of a better word, I can't think of cool or exciting how the Fishing with Friends PD, the police department kits and the pictures on some of the social media of our police department fishing with individuals in the community, I just think is a cool program. So I just it jumped out at me because we purchased the kits and it was one of the bills, but I just thought that's a pretty cool program. And I've seen a lot of the social media posts and people liking it. And I just think it's when you talk about building community, that's builds community. I just thought I think it's cool. And I wanted to shout it out because I saw it on the bill.
Thank you. Yeah, it was pretty neat seeing all that on there. So the Fishing with Friends are just they're such a great organization and they've done so much good in the community. They're just a great group of folks. All right, any other comments, questions on bills? If not, I'll entertain a motion, pay the bills.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Long.
Second.
Councilmember Grau to pay the bills. Call it. Discussion. Hearing none. Councilmember Grau.
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard.
Yeah.
Councilmember Wong.
Aye.
All right, other business. Councilmember Hatfield.
I just wanted to thank everyone involved in getting the polling places up and ready. The polling place I was at, Church on the Hill, looked great and there was lots of distance. And also thank you to all the election judges that did work in this, in a pandemic that's not easy to commit your whole day to go breathe on other people or breathe their air. So thank you to them. And everything was looked really nice and like I said, lots of distance. So it was a very safe voting experience. So thank you to everyone that took part in planning that. And that's all I had.
Thank you. That's a good comment. It was more of a challenge this year, and the general election will be just as much of a challenge. But I think now that people had an opportunity to see it, hopefully anyone that's interested in being a judge, we will be looking for more when the general election happens in November. So please keep that in mind. If you have that ability or have that interest to do that, we will be putting things out here probably not too far in the near future again, because it comes up fast. And I know, and I do want to just touch on Councilmember Hatfield, that some of our regular staff had to fill in and help out to be able to do that. And, we have to provide election services. So some of our staff that were able to juggle schedules or could work during or however, but they, and I don't even know what the final number was, but I know that a number of our staff became election judges. So that helped us get through this period, and probably will happen in November. I'm hoping not, but we just never know. So I just want to say thanks to all the staff that was able to juggle schedules and be able to switch and be an election judge for us. So thank you to all those folks. All right, Councilmember Wong.
Let's keep it short tonight. Just also like to echo the thank you to all the election judges. I know this year is a challenging one to recruit election judges, and a lot of the people who might normally be election judges, have, may have concerns about, the pandemic, or opted not to for various reasons. So, it's important that, people are stepping up to do that, and just want to thank everyone who did, because it's so important to, making sure we can all exercise our right to vote. And also just want to remind everyone about the upcoming food distribution at St. John's on Wednesday, August 26th from noon to 1:30. So I know that, I'll be volunteering there. I don't know if others are, but just wanted to put that out there that, that's for people who, might have a need, or share it with somebody who might. Yep. That's it.
Good.
Yeah. Echo the primary election. My husband actually signed up to be an election judge, and so he was at the community center, and he said it was a wonderful process. I felt very safe, well done. Got to work with some people around the room here. Yep. And he was really fascinated by the whole process. So yeah, I would say anybody that's interested, I think, it's a very safe environment, really exciting in that sort of way. So I know. I wanted just to touch on a couple of things. Nate had kind of alluded to it in regards to the CDA and some of the cities providing small business emergency assistance program. The application window actually opened today, and it runs today until September 4th. So as a business, it's a really simple application. You just need to kind of look in your books and provide some numbers. But with that, it's a grant, or it's a lottery system. And so from that, you could apply for $10,000 funding. So certain cities are allocating certain dollars, and the county's allocating dollars. So I think that's a really great program. And then on the flip side of it, there's also the housing stability program that the CDA is putting out. So this one is for individual renters or homeowners who are unable to pay their rent, mortgage, association dues, or utilities, like gas, electric. So that's up to $5,000. Again, you have to fill out an application either online or print it and then submit it in. So I just feel like those are really important to touch on for community members that might be struggling, or businesses in our county or city that might be struggling. And then I also saw that the county was putting out a transportation support funding for car payments or insurance. So you could get up to $2,500. Again, apply by the website, print or drop it off at the county. So there's just some really great programs out there for people that really have been financially hit by this pandemic. And I just, would love to let everybody know so they can take advantage of it.
Awesome.
That's
Good.
it.
Thank you. Councilmember Gra.
Things, Big Woods Boulevard officially opens tomorrow, although everyone in the neighborhoods have been using it already the last 2 days because most of the signs have been removed. I think it's been, what I've heard feedback from the neighborhood, and actually biked it with my family yesterday. The bike path, the trails are just awesome to kind of connect. I think one of the things that when I did some door knocking several years ago and running in those areas, talked about the lack of trails and sidewalks and just kind of connection. So I think we finally have that up there. I do appreciate the contractor that was in there. I think they did a good job working with the neighborhood. And I only think I saw one time. It was a friendly reminder to the neighborhoods of, the markings that they put for stakes aren't swords for kids to use. I think some of those were turning up missing every once in a while. I guarantee it wasn't my kids. But I think they worked well. We got along with them. I don't think it was just a good process. At times that may have meant me sitting behind a slow moving vehicle until they kind of got done what they needed to do and kind of move so we could get out of our neighborhood. But I think we're definitely excited. I know we're telling our relatives that they can now come that way. So it's good to see everything. And it's also really good to see all the landscaping that happened on the other side where we stop being able to see. So I think that's good. I do want to make sure that they take a priority on maybe putting the fencing. I know it talked a little bit on the announcement. They're going to wrap something up, some of the fencing, because there's a couple retaining walls that don't quite have permanent fence right now, and they have, I guess, snow fences, I think is what the technical term for them. So I just hope they get those priority up, because those sidewalks and bike
I'll
paths
be
are.
waiting for them to be made.
Sure. Yep. But they're definitely, trails are gonna be well traveled. I think I've seen lots of people up there. So exciting up there. To borrow a statement from Nate Bostrom, happiest day in Chaska is not happening. Touch a Truck, one of my favorite events of the council. I would have actually been this week, I believe, is typically when it's had. Unfortunately, the whole idea of Touch a Truck can't exist with COVID if you think about the whole logics of it. Plus, it's, a lot of people gather. So kind of a sad day for that and not to happen. I know my Facebook feed reminded me that this year, and it was always like I said, Nate always called it the happiest day in Chaska. So I just want to acknowledge that will be missed. I will, second to last thing, just wish luck to the Chaska Cubs as they start their state tournament. I know that's always an exciting time. It's for an uncertain start to their season, I think it's exciting to see baseball continue to be played in front of fans safely, which I think is important. And then lastly, I'll kind of close my comments just a little bit on, I do ultimately believe that strong cities are made up of strong school districts. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to the Eastern Carver County Schools and all the work the administrators and teachers have done, and the times and the hours of trying to answer questions. I understand that, it's a tough situation. You're trying to find a solution to a problem that doesn't have a good answer. You're sort of trying to monitor that. So I'm just very appreciative. I know they had a in-service days and trying to get together and collecting. I know they've extended some deadlines to be flexible with parents have asked. I also understand that, parents, there's a lot of questions that no one has answers for right now. And so again, I see both sides of that, but I do just want to take a shout out to all the people who have worked with the schools and the teachers and administrators and new superintendent, welcome to the job, right? I'm having to go through all this process, because I do think it's, sometimes when we're lost in the questions and confusions and just stress of it, we kind of forget that a lot of good people are doing a lot of good work on trying to make sure it's safe for our kids to go back to school. So just wanted to close with that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. The school is, there's still probably half the people that want the schools open, half don't want them open, and the school district has to make that decision how to make that work. And so they have got their hands full right now. And I know anyone that has school-age children, and especially if you have them at multiple different grade levels, where some will be in school, some won't, that has to be very challenging and to try to work and pay the bills. So good luck to everyone there. It's a challenge that I hope you start now. Don't wait till the last minute to figure out all the things that go along with that. So
I just had one more thing I just thought of. I would not be a good father if I didn't wish my son a happy 8th birthday on Sunday. He'll be turning 8. So wanted to get that on the public record that my son is turning 8 on Sunday. So
next you'll be telling us he'll be 18. That's how fast they go. All right, you're good? All right. Kevin, anything? Luke? Nate?
Yes, just a reminder, we've got our joint council human resources work session scheduled for Thursday, August 27th in the 8 p.m., which was a mistake. It's 6:30 until 8:30 p.m.
And it's here.
It'll be here, yes.
Okay, so it is in person. All right.
6:30 to 8:30. All right.
6:30 to 8:30.
Okay. Anything else?
All I've got.
How about all you out there in TV land? Anybody?
Got real quick, as Nate sort of alluded, if we are going to have a work session on the 31st, which will be sort of our first budget session. We may have to have a very short meeting to deal with the Carver County CDA grant stuff if we end up going down that direction, but it'll be a real short meeting if we have one. The main focus will be on the work session. And then second thing is it's official that River City Days was canceled. If people didn't see that, so that occurred this past week.
That was on my list as well. So thanks for sharing that. You're good, Matt?
Yep.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
You gotta be home for a little bit though. So
Only 10 days.
only 10 days. One down, 9 to go.
Yep.
All right. Anybody else viewing? I can't see who's on anymore. I don't even know if anybody's on. Okay. All right.
Alex.
All right. So, why Matt touched on that, the scheduling. So if we have that, if that turns out to be a council meeting on the 31st, I am not here. I'm gone. So, John, you would be the, as being the pro tem, you would be in charge of that meeting. So, if someone can relay, I'll try to send Denise a note if anything's got to be signatured. It gets straightened out. And then, so September 7th is Labor Day, so we will not have a meeting. And then we will meet the 14th and the 21st again. So for meeting schedules, so people have that ability to follow us. I have a couple things that I want to touch on. I don't know if we finally got that done or if MnDOT did it all on their own, but the left turn signal from eastbound 61 to northbound 41 has finally been changed to an LED so people don't sit there because they can't see it. So thank you, whoever got that done, or if MnDOT just did it on their own, but we don't have that horn honking and people mad because nobody goes because they don't see it. So good to hear. So I was going to mention County Road 44 opens tomorrow, but that's been done. Just a couple things. I had some questions on the downtown project and I got some answers. So they're finishing the storm sewer around 4th in the courthouse. Then they're going to move and start working on the two side streets. They're not tearing into the bridge yet because they got to wait a little bit to get the culverts made. So I think they're going to wait till a little closer day. So, but I had some questions that was asked of me that seems like the project's delayed. They're really not delayed. It's just how they're staging because of the contractor actually wanted to bring another crew in, but they were worried that it's too much equipment in such a small area to work with. So it sounds like they will be working in the neighborhoods now as early as tomorrow or for sure by Wednesday, the way it sounds. So just wanted to touch on that. Another thing I wanted to touch on, it was just in our consent plan, but was our 2040 comp plan. We just ran it through consent, but there's a lot of effort involved in putting a comp plan together. And I just want to say thanks to staff because I know that that's never fun to go through that. Although ours was updated recently, so maybe wasn't quite as challenging this time through. But then COVID comes along knocking at the door. So just makes everything a little more challenging. But and I know that part of this comp plan had a project a little bit on hold because of something, I'm not even sure, but something in there. So it's good to see that that is done. And I just want to thank everyone for doing that. And then I forgot to go over there today because I was gone last week, but I got a picture sent to me. And are the new doors in at City Hall? Or are they working on them?
I'm working on them today. They had some doors in. I don't know if they're fully complete, but they're close. So,
I'm sorry, they're not going to be rusty anymore?
no.
Oh, wow. Can we have a ribbon cutting? I'd like to.
Can we all picture taken in front of them?
Distance.
I'm sort of sad I don't get to see this. I've only waited for 9 months.
Yeah, and never have you been asked about those doors, have you?
No, never. I had no idea.
Yeah, I was on vacation and I got
9 more days. No, I strongly encourage you to come visit them, touch them yourself.
Maybe not touch it.
That was sent to me.
Hand sanitizer.
Hand sanitizer on it.
And I think the guy that sent it to me said, now leave me alone. They're done. Leave me alone.
Hey, what are people gonna?
So, all right. Lastly, I just want to myself say thank you to the citizens of Chaska. We just, our election filing period closed last Tuesday, the same day as the primary. And fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it, myself and Councilmember Hubbard and Councilmember Wong are all opposed. And I'm hoping that the thought is that people feel confident in our leadership in what we're doing. I know that part of it may be COVID scared people off as well, because it'd be very tough to run campaigns this year. But anyways, I just want to say on behalf of myself to say thank you to the voters, their trust in me to allow that. This is the first time that I think that I've ran unopposed for a number of terms now. So I just, again, want to say thank you. I won't have to work as hard as election, so I can spend more time being the mayor. So that's a good thing. So, but thank you for that. And I don't know how you guys feel, but
Great about that.
yeah, this is your, yeah, so, but anyways, thanks for that and greatly appreciated. So with that, last call, otherwise I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, so I heard a motion by Councilmember Hubbard, second by Councilmember Hatfield. Is that correct? All right, so Councilmember Hubbard,
Yes.
Councilmember Wong.
Aye.
Councilmember Hatfield.
Yes.
Councilmember Grau.
Yes.
Mayor Winchell, aye. We are opposed 5-0. Opposed. We are adjourned with a 5-0 vote. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you in, well, 3 weeks now, I guess.
2 weeks. 2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks. I won't be here though.
Next Thursday, actually, if you want to get technical.
Yeah, thanks.